Chapter 1576. As one of the 6 families, the Cape family had been like the other 5 families in recent years. Compared to the era when the 6 families controlled the Federation, they kept an abnormally low profile. Of course, such a low profile didn't mean that the Cape family was in dire straits. It was just that the 6 families were working hard to digest the resources brought about by the world's evolution. In the past, the 6 families needed to rely on the Holy Land, but with the acceleration of Earth's dimensionalization, they had the opportunity to obtain large amounts of resources. They didn't need to rely on the resources provided by the Holy Land like before. This was also the fundamental reason why the 6 families dared to attempt to escape the Holy Land's control. With resources, they had the capital to resist. In this rapidly changing era, the Cape family was one of the families that had changed the most. Companion beasts, guardians, spirit casting, mythical liquid, as long as it was a weapon that could make humans stronger, the Cape family was actively attempting it. This also allowed the Cape family's strength to constantly increase. Their development of the surrounding dimensional zones was also the highest among the large families. Sunset City was a city that the Cape family had built in a dimensional zone in recent years. As there was no natural light in this dimensional zone, there was darkness everywhere. Only the area where the city was located was brightly lit, so it was also known as Luminous City. This dimensional zone was called the God's Forbidden Zone. It was a dimensional zone that the Cape family had discovered and developed in recent years. The God's Forbidden Zone was very strange. It was as though it was a world that divine light couldn't illuminate. There was no birth, aging, or death here, as though one could obtain eternal life. Of course, this birth, aging, and death referred to a natural state. If one was killed, they would still die. After the Cape family discovered this characteristic of the forbidden land of the gods, they built Sunset City here, and the members of the Cape family gradually moved to live in Sunset City. The faces of the humans who lived here seemed to be fixed. They still looked the same as when they entered a few years ago. There were no signs of aging. Only by leaving Sunset City would time continue to leave traces on them. Who didn't want to live forever? With the magical powers of the God's Forbidden Zone, the Cape family recruited many young geniuses to join them. Their faction also grew stronger by the day. However, because they had yet to fully develop the dimensional zones they controlled, they didn't have the energy to plunder the resources of other places. Therefore, it made people feel that the Cape family had kept a low profile in the past few years. Joan had long heard of the Cape family's Sunset City and the God's Forbidden Zone. He had always wanted to take a look, but he had been held back by other matters. The reason Joan wanted to come to Sunset City wasn't because he had a grudge with the Cape family. He wanted to find trouble with them, but because of the forbidden zone of God's dimensional zone. Recently, Joan had been studying which dimensional zones were compatible with his primordial energy art. He wanted to advance his primordial energy art to the gods. When he saw the information of the God's Forbidden Zone, of the gods, and of the gods, of primordial of gods of the gods. Some people would ask why the Tao Sutra was a primordial energy art of the East District, but it was compatible with the Forbidden Land of the gods. Joan didn't think it was a problem. He only looked at the characteristics and didn't deliberately differentiate between the East and West. of the cities of the eastern of. As was. He didn't that of the god of the special space. To east of the god, to the gods, forbidden of the god. Furthermore, a special space like the God's Forbidden Zone seemed to have the possibility of being compatible with the Godfiend era. Of course, these were all Joan's own guesses. He had never been to the God's Forbidden Zone, but he felt that there was such a possibility. He wanted to take a look at it. Furthermore, his relationship with the Cape family had never been good. If he really fought with Nine Yang and destroyed the Cape family's territory, Joan wouldn't feel the pinch. If the God's Forbidden Zone was really compatible with his primordial energy art and could help him advance to the Calamity Realm, Destroying the god's forbidden zone would make Zhou feel at ease. He wouldn't feel like he had let down the Cape family. Stop. It's a forbidden zone ahead. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to barge in. A Cape family guardian blocked Zhou and Nine Yang's path. Please inform the owner of this place that we want to enter to take a look, Zhou said to the guardian with a smile. Do you have an appointment? The guardian sized up Zhou and asked. Zhou was wearing casual clothes and carrying demonic neonate in his arms. He looked completely different from when he was on the rankings. The guardian clearly didn't recognize him. What? Don't you see Lord Saint here? What appointment do you need? Zhou said as he pointed at Nine Yang. So what if he's a saint? This is the Cape family. Without an appointment, even a saint can't enter, much less a saint. The guardian was very stubborn. Zhou naturally wasn't angry. He said to Nine Yang with a smile, from the looks of it, your name isn't very useful. Nine Yang didn't even look at Zhou as though he didn't want to bother with him. Zhou originally wanted to push the blame for barging into Sunset City to Saint, but he couldn't help but feel depressed when he saw Nine Yang not say a word. Mr. Zhou, if you want to come to our Sunset City, all you need to do is report your name. There's no need to call yourself a saint. A young man walked out and said to Zhou, You know me, but I don't know you. Isn't that a little unfair? Zhou sized up the young man. He was in his 20s and didn't look much older than Zhou. He had blonde hair, green eyes, a high nose bridge, and a slender figure. Although he was nearly 2 meters tall, he didn't look overly tall due to his good body proportions. My name is Carlos. I'm very happy to meet you, Mr. Zhou. The young man smiled and extended his palm. You people from the Cape family shouldn't be happy to see me, right? Zhou didn't extend his hand as he looked at Carlos. I don't know if the rest of the Cape family will be happy to see you, but I'm very happy to see you. You have always been my idol, Carlos said with a serious expression. Are you sure you're an idol? Not someone you want to beat up? Zhou was somewhat surprised. Mr. Zhou, you're overthinking things. The grudge between you and the Cape family is one thing, and my admiration for you is another. Although I also want you to die, this doesn't affect my admiration for your achievements. If possible, I hope you can give me an autograph. I'll definitely treasure it well, Carlos said sincerely. There's no need for an autograph. Let's shake hands. Zhou reached out and shook Carlos's hand. Zhou definitely didn't dare sign something like an autograph. Chapter 1577. Zhou imagined that Carlos wanted to take the opportunity to compete with him, but to his surprise, Carlos only shook his hand. Mr. Zhou, may I know why you came to Sunset City? Carlos asked. Someone wants to fight. I heard that Sunset City is a good place, so I came to take a look, Zhou said. Although our Cape family had some misunderstandings with you in the past, that's all in the past. If you have any dissatisfaction with our Cape family, why don't you say it directly? On behalf of the Cape family, I'll definitely give you a satisfactory explanation, Carlos said calmly. I'm not the one who wants to fight, but this person. You should discuss it with him. Zhou pointed at Nine Yang behind him. This gentleman is... Carlos sized up Nine Yang, but he was wrapped up so tightly that he couldn't tell who he was. Nine Yang glanced at Zhou. He naturally knew that Zhou wanted him to be the scapegoat, but Nine Yang had no intention of defending himself. Nine Yang, let me borrow your Sunset City, Nine Yang said indifferently. Carlos was taken aback when he heard Nine Yang's name. There was probably no one in the Federation who didn't know Nine Yang's name. Carlos looked at Zhou in disbelief. Zhou said, I guarantee it's real. It is Sunset City's honor that the two of you want to fight in Sunset City. However, I hope that the two of you can give me some time to clean up the city so that the two of you can fight in peace, Carlos said in a pleasant tone. He wasn't angry at all. Sure, Nine Yang said. Both Nine Yang and Zhou Wen knew that Carlos likely wanted to move the people in the city out to prevent them from being accidentally injured in the battle between the two of them. Nine Yang was at the calamity grade. For Zhou Wen to be his opponent, he definitely wasn't too weak. A battle at that level could easily destroy a city. In that case, I'll show the two of you around Sunset City. Carlos called someone over to give a few instructions before leading Zhou Wen and Nine Yang into the Forbidden Land of God. Just as the legends said, it was pitch black inside the Forbidden Land of Gods. Nothing could be seen. In the darkness, there was a road paved with street lamps that extended into the darkness like a glowing snake. At the end of the road was a brightly lit city. The luminous city in the darkness was exceptionally mysterious and beautiful. When Zhou Wen walked into the darkness, he felt a nomological force binding his body. The heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder immediately reacted. This was only a normal reaction. Back at Mount Laojun, the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder would also have a reaction. Was Sunset City built later? Zhou Wen was here in search of an opportunity to advance to calamity grade. He had no interest in cities built by humans. Yes, there are no buildings in the Forbidden Land of Gods. It's just a dark, desolate area. There aren't even any dimensional creatures. Every blade of grass, tree, lamp, and brick here was transported in by our Cape family. It was built according to the design, Carlos said. Upon hearing Carlos's words, Zhou Wen lost even more interest in Sunset City. Hence, he asked, is there really nothing in the huge Forbidden Land of the Gods? That's not it. Carlos thought for a moment and said, there's indeed a city in this darkness, but all that's left of the city are dilapidated walls. It should have been destroyed in the war. We've also studied the city before, but we didn't find any traces of living creatures, nor did we find any remnants of daily necessities. It's as though it was originally an empty city. Interesting. Take us there to take a look. Zhou Wen's interest was piqued. This way, please. Carlos had a good temper. He led the way with a flashlight in hand. They circled around Sunset City and headed deep into the darkness. Along the way, Zhou Wen observed the Forbidden Land of the Gods. The ground here was barren like a wasteland. There were traces of battle everywhere. There were all kinds of ring-shaped craters, similar to the ones on the moon. However, it could be seen that the ring-shaped craters weren't formed by meteorites, but by some kind of force. There were also some crisscrossing rifts that looked like huge saber marks. Apart from the darkness, the other laws here were somewhat chaotic. For example, when sound passed through the empty space, it would distort. Clearly, there was some kind of distortion or fault in the space there. Darkness wasn't a problem for Zhou Wen, but the distortion of space and sound affected truth listeners' ability. As Carlos walked, he explained, legend has it that the gods once fought here and destroyed everything here, including order and light. They prevented everything from growing and eventually turned it into a forbidden land for life. Since this is a forbidden land where nothing lives, why is it said that one can live forever here? Zhou Wen asked. It's just a misrepresentation. It's true that one cannot age here, but that's only in appearance. In fact, one's body will still age. No matter how young one looks, they will still die when they're young, Carlos said. I see. However, even if it's just immortality, it's already a very powerful ability. There should be many beautiful women who are willing to live in Sunset City their entire lives, right? Zhou Wen wasn't surprised. If Sunset City could really allow people to live forever, the Cape family probably wouldn't have been able to occupy this place so peacefully. There are indeed many beautiful ladies who come to Sunset City and stay here for a long time. If you're interested, Mr. Zhou, you can take a walk in Sunset City. It can be considered a beautiful scenery that's rare elsewhere, Carlos said with a smile. Zhou Wen didn't comment. Nine Sons didn't say much. Clearly, he wasn't interested in this. Carlos continued talking about the forbidden land of the god. It was as though he had said everything he knew, making it impossible for anyone to find fault with him. Even as an enemy, they couldn't afford to fall out with him. Soon, Zhou saw the ruins of an ancient city in front of him. However, there were only some broken walls and stone pillars left in the ancient city. After countless years, the man-made things had been weathered to the point that they were about to return to their original state. On the broken walls and stone pillars, there were no human carvings or patterns. They were all in their most primitive state. Zhou kept using Truth Listener and his eyes to observe and sense, but unfortunately, he didn't discover anything special in the ruins. He didn't find the tiny palm symbol, nor did he find anything that could advance him to the calamity grade. "Let's do it here," Nine Sons said to Zhou impatiently. "All right. Since this is the place where the gods once fought, it's a good place for a duel," Zhou said with a nod. "Do you want to entrust the child in your hand to them?" Carlos said as he glanced at the demonic neonate in Zhou's arms. "Mr. Zhou, if there's a need, you can rest assured and leave her to us to take care of. Our Cape family won't do anything to a child," Carlos said. "There's no need. It's just for fun. I'll carry her myself." Zhou didn't really plan on fighting Nine Sons to the death. Chapter 1578. Many people in Sunset City are ordinary people. I hope the two of you can understand. Try not to implicate those innocent people, Carlos said. Although this place was far enough from Sunset City, coupled with the special rules of the Forbidden Land of the Gods, making it difficult for energy to be transmitted over long distances, the possibility of Sunset City being affected wasn't high. However, just in case, Carlos still mentioned it first. "I think it's best if you withdraw everyone," Zhou said. "All right. Please wait a moment. Give me an hour." Carlos didn't waste any time. He turned around and quickly returned to Sunset City. Many core members of the Cape family in Sunset City were waiting for Carlos's news in the conference room. "Carlos, is that person really Nine Sons? Why did he come here? Are they really going to duel here? Why did you order everyone to leave the Forbidden Land of the Gods?" Carlos waited for them to stop before slowly saying, "They are going to duel at the ancient city ruin. Just in case, everyone has to temporarily leave the Forbidden Land of the God." Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they heard Carlos's words. The ruined city is far from our Sunset City. Furthermore, with the rules of the Forbidden Land of the Gods, it's impossible for the aftershocks of the battle to reach here. There's no need to move, right? There are more than 100,000 people in Sunset City now. It's not something that can be moved easily. Besides, no matter how strong Nine Sons is, it's impossible for him to really massacre the city, right? How strange. If it's really Nine Sons, why did he duel Zhou? Although Zhou is very strong, he shouldn't have reached the level of Nine Sons, right? Everyone discussed, but most people's opinions didn't change. "Who has the final say here?" Carlos asked expressionlessly. "Of course it's up to you, but..." An elder from the Cape family wanted to say something. "Since you know that it's up to me, carry it out. Everyone has to leave Sunset City and the Forbidden Land of the Gods in an hour. If anyone has any objections, you can report me to the family head in the future. Now you have to carry out my orders immediately," Carlos said coldly. Everyone looked at each other. Although many of them were unhappy, they knew that it was useless to say anything. Carlos had the final say here. "Making a mountain out of a molehill. We will definitely tell the family head about this." The elder snorted coldly and left the conference room. The others also left one by one and began to evacuate. Carlos ordered his men to supervise the evacuation work. A middle-aged man named Yu Kai waited for the others to leave before he came to Carlos' side and said, "Carlos, is this really necessary?" The abandoned city was still very far from Sunset City. Even if it was a battle between calamity grades, it should not be able to affect this place. Moreover, if we forcibly evacuate everyone because of this, it will have a negative impact on our family's reputation. Carlos shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "Although the chances aren't high, I can't risk the lives of the entire city. Furthermore, it's not like you don't know the grudge between Zhou and our Cape family. He might take the opportunity to take revenge. Moreover, I faintly feel that he didn't come here just for a simple duel. Why did he want to duel with Zhou? There has to be a reason why he has to come to the forbidden land of the gods. So, we can only wait and see what he wants to do. We can only prepare for the worst. Is Zhou that strong? Yu Kai pondered. Do you think that a saint like Zhou would casually duel with someone? Carlos asked in return. That's true. I'll go take a look then. Yu Kai thought about it and agreed. Although Zhou had lost to the Egg Sovereign, his strength was known to everyone. How could such a person casually duel with a weakling? The fact that Zhou would duel with Zhou meant that Zhou was likely in existence on the same level as Zhou. At the very least, he wasn't too far off. Do you think Zhou might be the Egg Sovereign? Carlos suddenly said. It's really possible. Let's go and take a look. Yu Kai's eyes lit up. After Carlos returned, Zhou walked straight into the ruins. He wanted to search again, hoping to discover something new. What are you looking for? Zhou suddenly asked as he followed Zhou. It wasn't easy for me to come here. I want to take a look. Perhaps I might find something, Zhou answered casually. If you are looking for the domain core here, I'm afraid you will be disappointed. There are no domain cores in the forbidden land of the gods, Zhou said. What's a domain core? Zhou was slightly taken aback. He roughly guessed what Zhou was referring to. You don't even know what a domain core is. How did you advance to the calamity grade? Zhou paused for a moment. Without waiting for Zhou's answer, he explained, a domain core is the core of a domain. If you want to advance to the calamity grade, you need to find the domain core that corresponds to your primordial energy art. Only by absorbing the domain core can you advance to the calamity grade. Typical dimensional zones only have one core. If the core is destroyed, the dimensional zone will be crippled. This is the reason why the various calamity creatures on Earth will destroy the dimensional zones they were born in. Then how do you know that there's no domain core here? Zhou never expected to hear this. If he had known this earlier, he wouldn't have taken so many detours. The stronger the dimensional zone, the higher the quality of its domain core. After advancing to the calamity grade, the level of the calamity domain can reach is directly related to the domain core. Typically, domain cores are the same as the calamity grade. They are divided into 3 levels: mortal, hell, and heaven. If one absorbs a mortal level domain core, then after advancing to the calamity grade, one's domain power might very well remain at the mortal level for the rest of their lives. It's almost impossible for them to advance any further. After adjusting his breathing rhythm, Zhou continued, in the mythical era, the forbidden land of the gods once had a heaven-level domain core. The so-called War of the Gods was actually just a fight for the domain core here. Unfortunately, the domain core was destroyed in the end. No one could take it away. Therefore, the forbidden land of the gods is actually a half-crippled dimensional zone. There's actually such a thing? Who snatched the domain core here back then? How do I know what level the domain core is? Zhou mumbled inwardly. He had no idea that domain cores had levels. Previously, when he absorbed the domain core, he didn't know any of this information. He felt that it was fine as long as it was compatible with his primordial energy art. He didn't think too much about it. If the ancient Sovereign Sutra, Qi refinement art, and Chaos Egg's domain cores are only at the mortal level, doesn't that mean there's no way to advance further? Zhou was somewhat worried. Chapter 1579. Haven't you already advanced to the calamity grade? Why are you still searching for a domain core? Nine Suns had seen Zhou's speed. It was definitely at the calamity grade, so he had always believed that Zhou had long advanced to the calamity grade. Zhou didn't answer, nor was he in a position to answer. He could also be considered at the calamity grade, But that was under the condition of simulating other primordial energy arts. He hadn't advanced to the calamity grade. You haven't told me how to distinguish the level of a domain core, Zhou asked. A domain core isn't a dead object. The level is just a man-made division. To know the level of a domain core, you can only observe the domain itself. The stronger the dimensional zone, the stronger the domain core condensed. There are also some other details that you need to observe yourself. There are no fixed standards, Nine Suns said. Zhou thought to himself, Tiantian's hut is definitely very strong, but are those words considered a domain core? The ancient sword tomb should be very strong. The possibility of it being at the heaven realm is very high, but I can't be sure. Emperor Sui's tomb can only be considered special. It's hard to say if it's at the heaven realm. Zhou had always been cultivating by himself. Today, he finally learned this more official information. He was somewhat puzzled. Why are you telling me this? Zhou asked Nine Suns. He was considered enemies with the Holy Land, so Nine Suns didn't seem to need to tell him this. Nine Suns said indifferently, these matters are considered secrets among humans, but in the Holy Land it's not a secret. Since you will soon enter the Holy Land, it's fine to tell you this in advance. It's good to have confidence, but you have to be prepared to be dealt a blow. Zhou felt that Nine Suns' temper was very odd. The two of them were clearly enemies, and Zhou had previously defeated him in the Dubhe Star Palace. Now they were about to have a duel. However, Nine Suns could speak to him calmly. If it wasn't for the upcoming duel, Zhou would even feel like he was chatting with a friend, not an enemy. In fact, Zhou didn't realize that he was also such a strange person. To Nine Suns, Zhou was also an enemy. It's about time. There's no need to wait any longer. Let's begin. Summon your companion beast. Let me see what else you have apart from that companion beast, Nine Suns said to Zhou as he looked in the direction of Sunset City. It's just a duel. There's no need to fight to the death. Why don't we set a rule? Zhou didn't wish to fight to the death with Nine Suns. What rules? Asked Jiuyang with a frown. I'll use companion beasts or you use guardians. That won't be the true embodiment of our own abilities. We won't use external forces and will control our strength at the epic stage. We'll completely rely on our own cultivation level and skills to fight. How about we decide the victor? Zhou had seen Nine Yang's technique and knew that his technique and realm were top-notch. He just lacked strength. All right. Nine Yang looked at Zhou seriously before agreeing. Yu Kai and Carlos happened to rush back at that moment. Upon hearing their conversation, Yu Kai was enlightened. It's no wonder Zhou dared to duel Nine Yang. So he had such plans. However, Carlos shook his head and said, don't think of things so simply. Although their strength is at the epic stage, Nine Yang has already experienced the strength of a calamity grade. Standing at a different height, Nine Yang will see things more comprehensively. His realm is also much higher than Zhouwen's. It won't be that easy for Zhou to win. That's true. Even if the same amount of money is given to different people to operate, the person with more information will definitely be the one who earns more money. Yu Kai thought of the industry he was familiar with. While the two of them were discussing, they didn't notice a figure standing in the darkness not far away from them. Because the environment was too dark and the figure didn't have any aura, he was like a ghost. No one noticed his arrival at all. This person was naturally God Luo, who had been secretly monitoring Nine Yang. He had heard the conversation between Zhou and Carlos. Nine Yang is too stubborn. Jiuyang is too stubborn. You can call him stupid or clumsy, but when it comes to determination, there is probably no one else in the world who can compare to him. He has been training hard since he was young. Among us holy disciples, in the first year, any holy disciple would be better than Jiuyang. In the second year, Jiuyang was able to keep up with everyone's progress. By the third year, very few holy disciples of the same generation were his match when it came to the same type of martial arts. We could only use other techniques to make up for it and think of ways to beat him. After a few more years, even if Nine Yang only uses the most ordinary martial arts techniques, it will be very difficult for anyone to defeat him in terms of martial arts technique. God Luo thought to himself, Zhouwen wants to compete with Nine Yang in terms of martial arts techniques and realm. It looks like I don't need to do anything. What a pity. What weapon will you use? Zhouwen asked Nine Yang. My body is my weapon, Nine Yang answered very naturally, but he also sounded confident. Then you won't mind if I use a saber, right? Zhouwen asked. Up to you. Nine Yang clearly didn't mind. Zhouwen extended his hand and beckoned. The bamboo blade appeared in his hand, but after some thought, Zhouwen put it away and summoned an epic companion beast saber. Since he had said that he would fight with epic strength, using the bamboo blade was too much. You can use the saber you're used to, Nine Yang said. It doesn't matter what saber I use. Since I came up with the idea, you can make the first move. Zhouwen held the saber hilt and didn't pull it out. Nine Yang didn't stand on ceremony. He moved his feet and threw a punch at Zhouwen. Indeed, he only used strength at the epic stage. Furthermore, this punch didn't look profound. It was just an ordinary jab. It was fast enough, but with strength at the epic stage, his speed was far inferior to his usual speed. Ignoring Zhouwen, even Yu Kai and Carlos could see it clearly. It wasn't difficult for them to dodge. However, Zhouwen could only use strength at the epic stage, so the speed he could unleash wasn't very fast. Facing such a jab, he didn't choose to dodge. Instead, he raised his scabbard and blocked Nine Yang's attack. Nine Yang's expression didn't change when his fist was blocked. His other fist followed up as both fists rained down like a storm. Nine Yang's fist technique was indeed not profound. Furthermore, he didn't have Feng Qiuyan's ability to become stronger the more he fought. However, such a mediocre fist technique made Zhouwen feel pressured. In this world, it wasn't that the more complicated something was, the more advanced it was. Sometimes, simplicity was also a form of beauty, a simple high-level texture. Nine Yang was the kind of person who could make simple things have a high-level texture. It was clearly a very simple fist technique, but when Zhou Yang used it, it gave off a powerful sense of oppression. It felt as though even though Sun Wukong had 72 transformations, he couldn't withstand the might of Gautama Buddha. Chapter 1580. It looks like Nine Suns is very serious. God Luo knew very well that the simpler Nine Suns fist technique was, the stronger it was. Yu Kai obviously didn't understand this logic. He had always felt that when a true expert made a move, it would be impossible to defend against it. When they made a move, it would be an extremely fierce killing move. Every move would be able to kill someone. Even if it wasn't gorgeous, it would be strange and unpredictable. Yu Kai could not tell what was so good about a simple fist technique like Nine Suns. He said with some doubt, "This is the legendary Calamity Grade Super? It doesn't look like much. I can also use such a fist technique. I think these Calamity Grades are just stronger. Their realm might not be much higher than the average person's." Carlos sneered and said, "If you had used such a fist technique to fight Zhouwen, you would have been killed long ago." Yu Kai said unconvinced, "I guarantee that my fist technique is exactly the same as Nine Suns. He's fine. Why would I be killed by Zhouwen?" Carlos said, "You only saw his fist technique, but you didn't see the details." Details? Yu Kai was slightly taken aback. His fist technique is very simple, his movement technique is also very simple, and his footwork is also very simple. However, when he uses these things, it's really not simple. In fact, it's not simple at all, Carlos said. Why can't I see anything special about it? I can also use these things of his without any difference. Yu Kai sized him up carefully again, but he still could not see any problems. Carlos did not look at Yu Kai. Instead, he stared at Nine Suns in battle and said, You can't tell because he has already reached the realm of becoming one with nature. He looks ordinary, but in fact, every move of his movement technique, footwork, fist technique, and even the changes in his eyes, is perfectly integrated with the surrounding environment. Fighting in such ruins, without a single brick or wall becoming an obstacle for him. Instead, these external objects have become his help. This is not something that can be summarized with just 2 words. You only saw the simplicity of his fist technique, but you didn't see the 3-dimensional world he built. You only saw his fist, but in his eyes there was the entire world. Isn't that amazing? Yu-Kai took a closer look, but he only felt that Nine Suns' battle was very smooth. He couldn't see any 3-dimensional world. Yes, this Saint Nine Suns is really very strong. It's not as simple as borrowing the power of a guardian. Even if he suppresses his strength to the epic stage, the chances of Zhou defeating him are pitifully low, Carlos said. What about you? Can you destroy that 3-dimensional world of his? Yu-Kai looked at Carlos and asked. Obviously, in his mind, Carlos was an existence comparable to Zhou. In fact, although Carlos was not famous, he had been entrusted with the heavy responsibility of supervising Sunset City at such a young age. This showed his status in the Cape family. Such a person naturally couldn't be an idiot. My guardian isn't as strong as his, Carlos replied. Then what if we ignore the guardians and only talk about martial arts realms? Yu-Kai asked again. I won't lose. Although Carlos's answer was somewhat ambiguous, he was confident that he wouldn't lose when facing a figure like Nine Suns. It was obvious that he was also very confident in his martial arts realm. I knew it. Saint Nine Suns, the Holy Spirit Associations and the League of Defenders Xian are definitely no match for you. In the future, you will inherit the position of family head. Our Cape family will definitely be able to restore our former glory, Yu-Kai said happily. Carlos chuckled and said, How can it be that easy? There are too many powerful fellows in the Federation now. I don't have the confidence to defeat the few fellows you mentioned. Ignoring everything else, just the 9 Suns in front of me will definitely be the one to die if we really fight to the death. That's because your guardian's level isn't as high as his. When the guardian's level is the same, he will definitely be the one to die, Yu-Kai said. That might not be the case. To be honest, even if our strength levels are the same, I'm not fully confident that I can defeat him. This person is like an immortal. I can't see any flaws that a mortal should have on him. I can't find any flaws in him at all. That's why I said that I won't lose, but I might not win either, Carlos said seriously. Well, I have a question. You made 9 Suns sound so powerful. Why hasn't he defeated Zhou yet? Yu-Kai asked in puzzlement. Carlos sighed and said, 9 Suns is very strong, but Zhou isn't weak either. His level isn't much weaker than 9 Suns. Furthermore, he has been purely defending. No matter how 9 Suns tempts him, he doesn't retaliate. Under such circumstances, it's very difficult for him to make a mistake. 9 Suns won't have a chance. So that's how it is. Now that you've explained it, I understand. It's just like sieging a city in ancient times. The defending side would have the advantage, and the attacking side would need to have several times the number of soldiers to be able to take down a city. But now, their strength is the same. It's very difficult for 9 Suns to win. Zhou sure has a good plan, Yu-Kai said. That's right. It's just like playing football. When a weak team competes with a strong team, they often choose defensive and counterattack tactics. Now, Zhou is using such a strategy, Carlos said with a nod. Their conversation was heard by Fallen God. He couldn't help but size up Carlos in surprise as he thought to himself, I never expected the Cape family to produce such a figure. Should I kill him first? However, after some hesitation, Fallen God temporarily gave up on this thought. He was mainly here for the companion beasts on Zhou. He didn't want to alert Zhou and make him wary. Fallen God's opinion was similar to Carlos's. Although Zhou didn't seem to be in a bad situation, just as Carlos had said, although a weak team could counterattack, a strong team might not give them a chance to counterattack. Especially a person like Nine Sons. He wouldn't make any mistakes, nor would he give his opponent a chance. Therefore, Zhou would definitely lose in the end. The difference in realm is still too great. Zhou doesn't have a chance. When Nine Sons defeats Zhou, it won't be too late for me to suddenly attack and snatch Zhou's companion beast. Fallen God enjoyed the battle between the two with the intention of watching a show. The saber in Zhou's hand constantly changed angles as he blocked Nine Sons' attacks again and again. He just wanted to see how high Nine Sons' realm was. This was the first time Zhou had encountered an opponent like Nine Sons. He was very curious. However, in terms of realm, Nine Sons' realm was still much inferior to Tingjian's realm. In terms of superiority, it was Zhou who was superior. However, Zhou was a little interested in Nine Sons' realm and wanted to take a few more looks. Nine Sons' realm was somewhat similar to the uncontested sword intent of the 3000 sword intents. It seemed like he could use it as a reference to bring it to the next level. Apex. Chapter 1581. Words of faith are not beautiful. Beautiful words are not believed. Those who are kind do not argue. Those who argue are not good. Those who are knowledgeable do not know. Those who are knowledgeable do not know. Saints do not accumulate. They believe that the more they have with others. The Tao of heaven is to benefit but not harm. The Tao of saints is to not compete. This was the origin of the name Indomitable Sword Intent. It originated from a passage in an ancient scripture. Not compete. Those who are capable do not need to compete. Things will naturally fall into their hands. This is because others cannot do what they can. They can only give things to them. The Nine Sons realm also had this meaning. It pursued one's own cultivation and was not influenced by external things. Zhou looked at the Nine Sons realm and gained a deeper understanding of the indomitable sword intent. There are too many sword intent. If I want to comprehend the true essence of all of them, even if I live for more than 1,000 years, I will only be able to comprehend a third of them, much less a mortal with a lifespan of 100 years. Furthermore, it is impossible to comprehend a sword intent's true essence in a year. I can just comprehend a few in the future. I can't pursue perfection like Nine Sons. The ancient scripture is right. Those who are knowledgeable do not know. Although my 3000 sword intents are not weak, the Nine Sons realm is much higher than any of the 3000 sword intents, Zhou thought to himself. As the realm was too similar, Zhou quickly made a huge breakthrough in the indomitable sword intent. Let's see how my sword intent cultivation is. Zhou's saber stance changed. He used a concept similar to Nine Sons. It was the indomitable sword intent that he had just broken through. Nine Sons, Carlos, and Shunluo's gazes froze at the same time. They could tell that the changes in Zhou's saber stance were very similar to Nine Sons' fist technique. He actually wants to imitate Nine Sons' technique and concept. Isn't that too idealistic? How can such a realm be mastered in a short period of time? Especially Nine Sons' characteristic of pursuing details. It's not something that can be learned just by imitating. It's like trying to imitate a tiger but failing. Shunluo snorted inwardly. Carlos was also somewhat puzzled. Zhou's actions seemed a little rash. It's true that you are a genius, but Nine Sons is also a genius. Furthermore, he's a top-notch genius. Aren't you a little too arrogant to think that you can use a technique that Nine Sons has practiced for so many years in such a short period of time? However, the battle between the two left Carlos and Fallen God dumbfounded. The saber in Zhou's hand was still unsheathed, but he had already switched from defense to offense. In the process of clashing with Nine Yang, their techniques and realms were almost 90% similar. Most importantly, Zhou had managed to fight Nine Sons to a draw without being at a disadvantage. Don't tell me There really is such a genius in this world. Carlos' eyes widened as he muttered to himself in disbelief. What do you mean? By the side, Yu Kai didn't understand. He could only tell that Zhou Wen wasn't just defending. However, his attacks weren't very powerful and were very ordinary. Carlos forced a smile and said, Yu Kai, do you think I'm a genius? Of course not. If you aren't a genius, then there wouldn't be any geniuses in the Federation. Although you don't have a king body inherited from your family, your talent, and perceptivity far exceed those with king bodies. I still remember that John took 2 months to master a primordial energy skill. You just casually practiced it for a while, and you're already much stronger than him, Yu Kai said. Then, do you think it's possible for someone to learn something that I need to spend a decade or 2 to master in just a few minutes? Carlos asked again. Of course not. It's impossible for a person to do such a thing. No, I shouldn't say human. It's impossible for humans to do it. If they can do it, they aren't human at all, Yu Kai said. But that guy just now did it, Carlos said with a wry smile again. Who? What did he do? Yu Kai was taken aback as he asked in confusion. Nine Yang's talent isn't inferior to mine. I believe his cultivation realm is also obtained through arduous cultivation. If it were me, I would also need that much time. However, in the short 20 to 30 minutes of battle, Zhou Wen actually learned his realm and was able to fight Nine Yang to a standstill, Carlos said. That's impossible, right? Could it be that Zhou Wen knew those things long ago and only used them now? Yu Kai guessed with an incredulous expression. Carlos sighed and said, I hope so too, but it's obvious that his realm is still improving. He's probably still in the midst of comprehension. In the past, I always felt that I was a genius, one that wasn't inferior to anyone in the Federation. Even in Tianzhua, I only treated him as a goal to catch up to. But after seeing Zhou Wen today, I suddenly feel disheartened and even despair. Don't think that way. Don't think that way. There must be a reason for this. It's impossible for humans to have such a genius. There must be a problem somewhere. We can find the problem. Don't give up. Yu Kai suddenly panicked. Carlos was the Cape family's most hopeful person now. If he were to become dispirited, it would undoubtedly be a fatal blow to the Cape family. Carlos said, Don't worry. I'm not a greenhouse flower that hasn't experienced any storms. Even if Zhou Wen is really such a genius, I won't give up on my goal. I'm just feeling a little wistful. That's good. Yu Kai heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Carlos's expression wasn't abnormal. However, he was still alarmed. If it was really as Carlos had said, then Zhou Wen was too terrifying. Shenluo was far more surprised than Carlos and Yu Kai. They didn't know much about Nine Suns, so they were only speculating. However, Shenluo knew a lot about Nine Suns. There were so many saints in the Sun Holy Temple, but only 9 sons had obtained the recognition of the Sun God's guardian and obtained the holy artifact of the Sun Holy Temple. Although everyone was a saint in name, 9 sons, who held the holy artifact of the Sun Holy Temple, was actually the son of the Sun Holy Temple. Shenluo was in a similar situation. He knew very well how much he had to pay to become the son of saint who wielded the holy artifact. 9 sons had been cultivating hard since he was young. His achievements were the result of years of accumulation. Even Shenluo had to admit that in terms of martial arts realm, he was no match for 9 sons. It was even difficult to imitate 9 sons' realm because it wasn't as simple as hard work. One also needed inhuman talent. Such a talented and extremely hard-working person had actually been imitated by someone in such a short period of time. Furthermore, the battle prowess displayed was not inferior to Zhou Yang's. This was simply unbelievable. This Zhou Wen looks much more terrifying than I expected. It's no wonder Lord Holy God sent me to assist 9 sons. As expected, Lord Holy God has foresight. Such a fellow must not be allowed to grow. Otherwise, he will become a great enemy of our holy land. Killing intent flashed in Shenluo's eyes. He had already decided to kill. Chapter 1582. The Holy Land could tolerate a human with a powerful companion beast, but it couldn't tolerate the existence of someone so powerful that he could threaten the Holy Land. Fallen gods secretly rejoiced. Thankfully, Zhou Wen's cultivation level hasn't reached an uncontrollable level. Before he fully matures, there's still a chance to destroy him. Shenluo was already planning to find a suitable opportunity to strike. However, before killing Zhou Wen, Fallen God wanted to snatch Zhou Wen's companion beast. From Fallen God's point of view, these two matters didn't conflict. Zhou Wen's main combat strength was his companion beast. As long as he snatched his companion beasts, it wouldn't be difficult for Zhou Wen to kill him even if he lacked strength and had a powerful realm. Fallen God was no longer watching the show. Instead, he stared intently at Zhou Wen, looking for the best opportunity to strike. Now, Zhou Wen hadn't summoned any companion beast. Furthermore, he had suppressed his strength to the epic stage. It could be said that this was the best opportunity for Godfall. It was a godsend opportunity. Shenluo was the Khanate Holy Temple's saint. The primordial energy art he cultivated was the same as Li Xian's, the invincible Khanate divine art. However, what Li Xian cultivated was an incomplete version, while what God Luo cultivated wasn't only the complete version, but also the version that had been modified by past saints. Unlike Zhiyang, Shenluo did not choose to form a contract with the Guardian. Instead, he chose the path of spirit casting and devoured the Khanate ancient god Guardian. In addition, the Khanate sacred palace had nurtured him with all their might. With a large amount of resources, Shenluo had already reached the same hell level as the Nine Sons. Furthermore, Godfallen's abilities were different from ordinary Khanate Holy Temple saint. His life providence, life soul, wheel of destiny, terror transformation, and calamity domain were different from Li Xian's. Li Xian needed to grow through being beaten, but Fallen God could directly plunder the growth of others. It could be said that the two of them were polar opposites, but there were some similarities. Shenluo's calamity domain was called Return to Khanate, or Khanate Deprivation. Within his domain, he could deprive his opponent of everything except their innate physique. Innate body referred to one's own body of flesh and blood. Other than that, clothes, weapons, accessories, as long as they were external objects, they could be taken away. Companion beasts were also external objects. Godfall could also deprive them. However, innate deprivation was not without its limitations. If the fallen god wanted to strip something, it had to come into contact with that thing. Moreover, it had to be on a living creature. Of course, the deprivation of companion beasts had to be done while Zhou Wen was alive. Otherwise, once Zhou Wen died, the companion beasts would transform into essence energy and return to the universe. Under normal circumstances, as long as the enemy summoned a companion beast, Godfallen could snatch it for his own use. However, Zhou Wen's fiend-armored Tiger Soul General was a little too strong. Shenluo wasn't willing to give Zhou Wen a chance to resist, so he decided to directly attack Zhou Wen's body. As long as they collided with the companion beast tattoos, even if they were invisible, they could still snatch the companion beast back. Therefore, what Shenluo needed to do now was to determine where the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General was on Zhou Wen's body. This wasn't difficult to determine. There was a general rule. For example, armor-type companion beasts typically had tattoos on their chests or back. Warrior-type companion beasts were typically tattooed on their palms or arms. Shenluo didn't know what the Tiger Soul General's companion form was, but from the looks of it, there was a high chance that it was similar to armor. Even if it wasn't, the chest and back of such companion beasts were most likely. These were also the targets Shenluo had chosen. As long as I snatch his Tiger Soul General, it will be easy for Nine Sons and me to kill him. Shenluo had already made up his mind. He was just waiting for an opportunity to succeed in one strike. In order to increase his success rate, Shenluo planned on touching Zhou Wen's body as much as possible. It wouldn't be a problem to snatch more companion beasts, but he couldn't miss the Tiger Soul General no matter what. Otherwise, it would ultimately be troublesome if Zhou Wen summoned it. Shenluo didn't know that even if Zhou Wen summoned the Tiger Soul General now, it wasn't as powerful as he had seen it on the magic cube. There was no heat here at all. The Tiger Soul General had no way of accumulating the demonic fire in its body, nor did it have the time to temper its body. Its level was only at the mortal stage, so it posed no threat to Shenluo and 9 sons. Shenluo didn't know this, so he was determined to obtain the Tiger Soul General. Shenluo even wanted to use the Tiger Soul General to kill Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen, who asked you to be enemies with the Holy Land. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for overestimating yourself. Shenluo took the opportunity and instantly appeared behind Zhou Wen. Shenluo was good at the connate embryonic breathing technique. In the eyes of others, Shenluo was no different from a rock on the ground. If one didn't see him with their own eyes, it would be difficult to discover his existence. With Shenluo being extremely careful, Zhou Wen failed to discover his existence. The moment Shenluo approached, his entire body pressed against Zhou Wen's back. His hands wrapped around Zhou Wen's chest. Connate deprivation took effect. The clothes that Shenluo had touched vanished before Shenluo touched Zhou Wen's body. Bam! Zhou Wen's reaction was extremely fast. In an instant, the Chaos Egg had already penetrated his body and sent Shenluo flying. Shenluo's figure flipped in the air and landed on the ground like a ghost. He licked his tongue and stared at Zhou Wen with his slender eyes. Egg Sovereign. So Zhou Wen is the Egg Sovereign. Yu Kai shouted when he saw the Chaos Egg on Zhou Wen's body. Carlos was slightly taken aback at first before he said in enlightenment, I see. It's no wonder 9 Yang challenged Zhou Wen to a duel. I should have thought of it long ago. In fact, Carlos couldn't be blamed. It was mainly because the Tiger Soul General's performance was too powerful. No one believed that Zhou Wen could kill such a dimensional creature and obtain a companion egg. Previously, people had guessed that the Egg Sovereign was most likely Human Sovereign. They didn't think of Zhou Wen. Their guess wasn't wrong, but no one expected Human Sovereign to be Zhou Wen. I never expected the Holy Land to think so highly of me. They actually ambushed a saint here to wait for me, Zhou Wen said with a frown. He could vaguely sense that something was amiss with his companion beast. Shenluo, what are you doing here? 9 Yang asked Shenluo with a frown. Naturally, I'm here to help you complete the mission, Shenluo said indifferently. This is my business. I don't need you, 9 Yang said coldly. This is an order from the Holy God. With that said, Shenluo ignored 9 Yang. He looked at Zhou Wen and said with a smile, Zhou Wen, this is the first time we've met. My name is Shenluo, a saint of the Connate Holy Temple. After you die, don't forget my name when you seek redress from the King of Hell. Chapter 1583. What did you do to me? Zhou Wen asked as he looked at his body. He could clearly sense that many of the companion beasts on him had problems. There was a faint force that seemed to lock onto a portion of his companion beast. This was especially so for the companion beasts on his back. The feeling was extremely intense. The spot on his chest that had been touched by Fallen God also experienced a similar situation. Fallen God smiled at Zhou Wen and said, What I'm doing is holding your life in my hands. If I want you to die, you have to die. If I want you to live, you can only live. I really want to see how I die, Zhou Wen said indifferently. Your greatest reliance is your companion beasts, right? Fallen God said as he snapped his fingers. With a snap, a hidden tattoo on Zhou Wen's body automatically appeared and flew out of his body. Even the Chaos Egg couldn't stop the companion beast from leaving. Soon, the poisonous bat-like companion beast flew to Fallen God's side and circled around him twice before flying onto his back and turning into a tattoo. How did this happen? Carlos and Yu Kai were alarmed. They had never heard of someone being able to snatch a companion beast away from a person. Companion beasts had powerful contractual powers. Once they hatched, they couldn't even be transferred. Forcefully transferring them would result in a huge price, even their lives. Fallen God had actually snatched a companion beast from him. If news of this ability were to spread, it would probably cause panic in the Federation. Is that all? Zhou remained unmoved. Zhou had already seen similar powers from Lu Yun. Furthermore, Lu Yun's technique was even more brilliant than Fallen God's. Zhou had roughly guessed that Fallen God had to touch the companion beast tattoo on his body to steal it away. As for Lu Yun's Star Stealer, it had long reached the point of stealing pets from thin air. Zhou had always wanted to learn Star Stealer, but the Star Stealer skill crystal had never dropped. This left him very vexed. Is that all? Fallen God's expression turned slightly cold as he raised his palm and slammed it down. With a smack, another companion beast tattoo appeared on Zhou body. This time, it wasn't just one. Instead, 10 appeared and flew towards Shenluo. Fallen God originally wanted Zhou to know what fear was. Robbing him of 10 companion beasts at once would probably make an ordinary person feel fear. However, Fallen God soon realized that the 10 companion beasts he had extracted from Zhou were all low-level companion beasts like Poison Bat, Runic Heavy-Armored Warrior, and Steel Furnace Sprite. He didn't even see a mythical one, much less a Tiger Soul General. And then, Zhou asked Fallen God. He had many low-level companion beasts. Ignoring the musical note sprites, he needed a large number of Runic Heavy-Armored Warriors, Steel Furnace Sprites, and other companion beasts when he fused them. Therefore, he would usually grind them when he had nothing to do. He had accumulated a lot of them. Furthermore, these companion beast tattoos were mainly on his chest and back. Fallen God's expression changed slightly. He never expected Zhou to have so many low-level companion beasts on him. Although there was no limit to the number of companion beasts that could be contracted, too many companion beasts were useless in battle. A person's control was limited. It was already pretty good if the average person could control 2 or 3 companion beasts while fighting. Even experts who cultivated in psyche arts would be impressive if they could control more than 10 companion beasts. Unless it was a companion beast with extremely high intelligence, summoning a large number of companion beasts would be no different from a mob. When the time came, they might even become a burden, much less help. Therefore, the typical person would choose companion eggs that were useful to them or supreme grade to incubate. Most of the companion eggs they didn't need would be sold. This was especially so for high-level experts like Zhou. They had no interest in companion eggs below the mythical stage. Even if they picked them up, they would give them to their friends and juniors or exchange them for materials they needed. It was very rare for someone like Zhou to have low-level companion beasts. If Zhou didn't need them for fusion, he wouldn't have obtained so many low-level companion beasts. Let's see how many low-level companion beasts you have, Fallen God said coldly as he clapped his hands again. Clap, 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 clap. Every time Fallen God used innate deprivation, he could deprive a maximum of 10 companion beasts. He could only sense that innate deprivation had locked onto Zhou's body, but he didn't know how many companion beasts there were. This was because no matter how many companion beasts there were, the tattoos would overlap. Furthermore, different companion beasts could appear in the same spot. Zhou's back and chest were densely covered in overlapping tattoos. Fallen God could only sense the companion beast tattoos, but he didn't know how many companion beasts there were, nor did he know what companion beasts they were. He wasn't slapping randomly. Every time he used innate deprivation, he expended a large amount of primordial energy. Even though Fallen God's primordial energy was extremely abundant, the random slaps caused sweat to seep out of his forehead. The companion beasts on Zhou's body flew out like a goddess scattering flowers. More than 100 companion beasts flew towards fallen God. Yukai and Carlos were deeply shocked by this scene. From their point of view, fallen God's innate deprivation was an invincible godly technique. With this kind of ability, he was basically an existence that could do whatever he wanted among the humans. After all, most humans relied on companion beasts to fight. Who wouldn't be afraid of fallen God's ability? I wonder if he can snatch the Guardian away. If he can snatch the Guardian away as well, that would be terrifying, Yukai muttered to himself. They were alarmed, but fallen God was so depressed that he nearly vomited blood. Before the companion beasts flew over, fallen God could already see them clearly. Many of them he had seen before. Even if he hadn't seen them before, many of them looked familiar. They were clearly low-level companion beasts that he often saw. Fallen God wasn't sure if there were any high-level companion beasts, but there was definitely no Tiger Soul General. Continue. Zhou stood there without moving, nor did he have any intention of attacking Fallen God. He wanted to know how many companion beasts Fallen God could snatch from him with such an ability and what the limits of such an ability were. As for whether his important companion beasts would be snatched away, Zhou wasn't too worried. He had too many companion beasts on him. It wouldn't be easy for Fallen God to draw a companion beast that Zhou valued. Furthermore, there weren't many companion beasts that Zhou valued in these parts. The imprisoned dragon was in this spot, but Infinite Demon Dragon King wasn't. Infinite Demon Dragon King was further down. The Tiger Soul General was also there, but Zhou wasn't worried at all. If Fallen God really wanted to snatch it away, Lu Yun was his role model. Chapter 1584. Godfall gritted his teeth and raised his hands again to slap. He refused to believe that Zhou only had trash companion beasts. Pa, 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 pa. After a series of random slaps, Godfall was covered in sweat. His eyes were red as the veins on his forehead popped out. As for the companion beasts on Zhou body, they flew out in large numbers like blooming petals and headed for Godfall. Carlos and Yukai were already dumbfounded, but Zhou was laughing inwardly. Godfall's luck clearly wasn't good. Among the companion beasts he snatched, there wasn't even a mythical companion beast, much less a dragon prisoner. They were all epic and legendary companion beasts. In fact, this couldn't be blamed on Godfall's bad luck. It could only be said that this was normal. After all, the ratio of mythical and terregrade companion beasts added together was at most 1 in 10,000. It wasn't easy to draw 1 to 200 companion beasts at the mythical and terregrade. Ignoring 10 consecutive draws, even 100 consecutive draws wouldn't have any mythical companion beasts to guarantee a guarantee. After the companion beasts landed on Godfall, they belonged to him. Upon receiving the information from the companion beasts, Godfall's pupils dilated instantly as blood seeped out the corner of his mouth. This fellow. How many trash companion beasts does he have on him? Godfall already knew that there wasn't even a mythical companion beast among the companion beasts he had snatched. Even Zhou didn't know the answer to this question. He had farmed a large number of companion beasts for fusion. Although many low-level companion beasts were useless to others, their life providences, life souls, and skills might be good materials for fusion. Zhou naturally wouldn't let go of them. He had been collecting companion beasts that others thought were trash. Just the companion beasts on his back numbered in the tens of thousands. It would be difficult for Godfall to draw the Tiger Soul General from them. This was still better than the place Godfall had chosen. He hadn't chosen the spot where the musical note sprites were. Otherwise, drawing a companion beast from hundreds of thousands of musical note sprites would make Godfall even more depressed. No. I can't continue like this. That bastard is crazy. He has so many trash companion beasts on him for no reason. From his detestable expression, there must be many more trash companion beasts. Godfall also knew that his primordial energy couldn't hold out any longer. If this continued, he wouldn't even need Zhou to do a thing. From the looks of it, I can only use the Khanate Holy Temple's holy artifact. Godfall took a deep breath and suppressed the trembling of his primordial energy. Each of the 6 holy temples had a holy relic, and only the holy disciples chosen by the holy temple were qualified to possess it. At present, 4 holy temples had already chosen the holders of the holy artifact. The trajectory holy temples was Shao, the sun holy temples was Jiryang, and the Khanate holy temples was Shenluo. The so-called holy artifacts were actually some special items that the divine sanctum had created by combining the dimensional energy of the divine sanctum and the power of earth, since it had descended on earth for countless years. The dimensional powers that the of the earth. The one earth was the dimensional powers. Although the holy artifacts had, it was originally of the companion, of the king god, continent, and it, that was Fong. One of saint of earth of the one, had God. Furthermore, it wasn't as simple as nurturing. Although the holy artifact had been nurtured previously, it was only in its embryonic form. Its abilities were very limited. With Earth's rapid evolution in recent years, the Holy Temple had extracted more power from Earth before the holy artifact could truly take shape. The Khanate Holy Temple's holy artifact was called the Khanate Yao. It was a stone talisman that looked like a comma. On one side of the stone talisman was a long horizontal line, and on the other side was a short horizontal line. The Khanate Yao's power was very mysterious. It seemed to have the ability to predict the future. However, this ability had to be stimulated by external forces, and not just any external force could activate this power. Even among the saints who cultivated the invincible Khanate divine art, there weren't many who could activate the Khanate Yao's power. Only Godfall could truly use the Khanate Yao. Godfall extended his palm, and the ancient stone talisman floated in his palm. As he circulated his primordial energy art, it surged into the stone talisman. The 2 vertical lines on both sides of the stone talisman suffused a strange light. The stone talisman gradually began to spin. Soon, the speed at which it spun made it impossible to see the stone talisman's original appearance. The stone talisman in Godfall's hand looked like a constantly spinning Tai Chi ball, emitting a boundless mysterious aura. Godfall, take back your holy artifact. Zhou is my target. I can finish him off myself, Nianyang said with a frown. Don't worry. I'll leave him to you, but I'm definitely taking his tiger soul general. Godfall's sleeves fluttered as the glow from the Khanate Yao grew stronger. It illuminated Godfall's face in an inexplicable manner. Zhou was originally wary and wondered if he should retreat first. However, after hearing Godfall's words, he felt relieved and dispelled the thought of retreating. He stared at the holy artifact in Godfall's hand that was changing like a Tai Chi ball, wanting to know what it was for. In the future, he would have to fight the Holy Land. It was good to know as much as he could about the Holy Land. With the Chaos Egg protecting him, Zhou didn't panic. As Xian Tian Yao's power grew stronger, Shenluo's entire body seemed to be affected by it as well. Xian Tian Yao's qi flowed between him and the talisman, making Shenluo feel as if he had been reborn. At that moment, Godfall was like an ancient god. His eyes seemed to have the Khanate's 6 trigram lines intertwining. His gaze was like lightning as he stared at Zhou Wen's body. Zhou Wen had an uncomfortable feeling as though he had been stripped naked and was being watched. In the next second, Godfall suddenly shouted, "That's him!" As Godfall shouted, he extended his right thumb and middle finger and snapped his fingers in the air. But, although it was also the Khanate deprivation, the snap of his fingers this time was like a bolt from the blue. A bolt of lightning even lit up between his fingers, illuminating the entire forbidden land of gods for an instant. After the thunderous sound, Zhou Wen felt his body loosen as though a heavy burden had fallen off his body. A companion beast was forcefully stripped away, transforming into a mecha god riding a ferocious tiger. It ran towards Godfall in midair. It was none other than the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. Zhou watched in surprise as the Tiger Soul General flew towards Godfall. He was quite alarmed. He actually snatched the Tiger Soul General away. That holy artifact is quite interesting. The Tiger Soul General wasn't a companion beast that could be easily snatched away. Zhou couldn't shake it off even if he wanted to, much less snatch it away. Zhou still remembered that the last time eldest senior brother Lu Yun had snatched the Tiger Soul General was because he had used the Zhang family's ancestral life reversing talisman. Furthermore, the Tiger Soul General's level back then was relatively low. Now that the Tiger Soul General was already at the Calamity grade, it could still be snatched away. This made Zhou extremely interested in the stone talisman. Chapter 1585. When Shenluo saw the Tiger Soul General fly towards him, he revealed a gratified smile. He thought to himself, although there were some twists and turns during the process, I still completed the mission. You should be proud to be able to force me to use a holy artifact. After the Tiger Soul General landed on Shenluo looked down at Zhou and said indifferently. However, when Shenluo sensed the information from the Tiger Soul General, he was stunned. He almost couldn't believe the companion beast information he had received. Impossible. How can it only be at the mortal stage? At that instant, Shenluo imagined that he had snatched a fake Tiger Soul General. Just from the Tiger Soul General's performance on Dubhe, there was no doubt that it was at the Hell stage. Furthermore, it was a top existence at the Hell stage. Only then could it have such might and easily kill two Star-Lord's greed. Therefore, when Shenluo saw that the Tiger Soul General was only at the mortal stage, he was momentarily unable to believe it. However, the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General's name wasn't bad and its appearance was correct. It was impossible for it to be fake. After all, Calamity-grade companion beasts were relatively rare to begin with. It was impossible for Zhou to have two identical Calamity-grade companion beasts. The chances were too low. Could it be that the Tiger Soul General is really that strong? It can kill a Hell stage companion beast at the mortal stage? Shenluo suspected. The difference between the mortal stage and the Hell stage was not only the difference in physical stats, but also the evolutionary difference in the Calamity domain. The Hell stage domain would have a qualitative change. For example, the two domains of water and fire might be mutually restrained if they were both at the mortal stage. However, if one of the domains advanced to the Hell stage, it would completely restrain the other domain. Shenluo had only noticed the Tiger Soul General's level and abilities. He hadn't had the time to carefully study his skills, so he didn't realize how terrifying the Jinx's master skill was. Zhou, is this the Tiger Soul General you used to kill Star-Lord Greed? Shenluo summoned the Tiger Soul General and asked Zhou while staring at him. Although he felt that the possibility of Zhou having two Tiger Soul Generals wasn't high, Shenluo still wanted to get to the bottom of it. If you think so, then so be it. If you don't think so, then so be it. Zhou looked at Fallen God with pity in his eyes. It was one thing to bring the Tiger Soul General with him, but he actually dared to summon it. Even Lu Yun wasn't as arrogant as him back then. You'd better answer my question. Otherwise, even if your Tiger Soul General is still here, only death awaits you. With the holy artifact, I already possess the power of the heaven realm. I'm already an invincible existence in the human world. Shenluo held the innate trigram in his hand, and his body shone brightly in godly rays that lit up the entire forbidden ground of gods. Zhou frowned as he looked at Fallen God. He could sense that he wasn't bragging. The strength of his aura had indeed exceeded the Hell stage creatures Zhou had seen. It was highly likely that he had reached the Heaven stage. What exactly is the so-called holy object? I didn't expect it to have such a terrifying effect. Zhou was even more interested in the Khanate Yao in Shenluo's hands. Although the heaven realm was very strong, Zhouwen had the chaos egg. It shouldn't be a problem for him to temporarily survive, so there was no need to be afraid. Invincible in the mortal world? Are you worthy? As Zhouwen spoke, he stared at the Tiger Soul General. He felt a little strange. Why wasn't Shen Luo unlucky? The last time Lu Yun stole the Tiger Soul General, he was immediately unlucky. Could it be that Shen Luo is the same as me and has the ability to not be afraid of Jinx's master? Or could it be that after being augmented by that holy artifact, Jinx's master is useless? Zhouwen muttered to himself. Nine Yang, you heard it too. He was courting death. No wonder I didn't leave him with you. As Shen Luo spoke, the Khanate Qi on his body became more terrifying. The innate trigram changed even more. It was like a miracle as it emitted Khanate divine light. The entire forbidden ground of gods was illuminated by the divine light. The lights in Sunset City paled in comparison. Everywhere was as bright as day. Just as Shen Luo was about to walk toward Zhouwen, he suddenly heard a strange sound. It sounded like something had shattered. Then, specks of starlight appeared in the forbidden ground of gods. The broken city bricks, the cracked ground, the broken stone pillars, the desolate desert, and the shattered ground were filled with specks of starlight. Like fireflies, they flew out from all directions and danced in the sky. It was like a heavy snow had fallen from the ground. Countless snowflake-like specks of light drilled out of the ground and went against the flow. The scene was extremely strange, but it was also extremely spectacular. What is that? Shen Luo looked at the snowflake-like specks of light and was somewhat puzzled. It wasn't just Shen Luo. Everyone was alarmed. They didn't know what the snowflakes that suddenly appeared were. It's here. It's here. Zhouwen was somewhat excited. In fact, he didn't know what the snowflake-like specks of light were, but he had a nagging feeling that the sudden appearance of the snowflakes had something to do with the Tiger Soul General. The specks of light constantly condensed in a spot in the sky like a snowball. Although they didn't know what it was, the terrifying energy fluctuations in the snowball left everyone alarmed. How dare you play tricks in front of me? Shen Luo held the Khanate divine light in his hand and transformed into a Khanate divine light that struck the huge snowball in the sky. The Khanate divine light was indestructible and could destroy almost everything in the world. However, when it struck the snowball, it was like water entering a sponge. It directly seeped into the snowball. The snowball, which was already emitting light, became even brighter. The snowflake-like specks of light that flew out of everything flew toward the snowball even faster and crazily, fusing with it. The specks of light that originally looked like it was snowing seemed to have turned on an accelerator as they rushed toward the huge snowball in the sky. Shen Luo was first taken aback before he realized the problem. These snowflake-like specks of light weren't caused by someone. They seemed to have appeared because of his Khanate power and Khanate divine light. Zhouwen naturally saw this scene. He had the same thought as Shen Luo. Those specks of light must have appeared because of the holy artifact. However, he thought more than Shen Luo. He felt that this coincidence might not be purely a coincidence. It might have something to do with the Tiger Soul General. Zhouwen carefully sensed the energy fluctuations of the specks of light, wanting to know what kind of power it was. However, the energy fluctuations of the specks of light were very special. He could only sense the existence of the energy, but he couldn't tell what kind of attribute it was. Zhouwen extended his finger and touched a snowflake-like speck of light with his fingertip. Immediately, he felt a strange power enter his body from his fingertip. This kind of power. Zhouwen's eyes widened in disbelief. Chapter 1586. Zhouwen was shocked when he sensed the power in the light spots. The power was attracted by the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. It flew toward the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder on the wheel of destiny. It landed in the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder and flashed before disappearing. This thing. Could it be the shattered domain core of the forbidden land of gods? Zhou Wen's expression kept changing as he looked at the light spots that filled the sky. More and more specks of light flew towards the snowball in the air, and their speed also became faster and faster. In just a moment, the countless specks of light all gathered together, forming a huge cloud of light in the air. Xinluo's Khanate trigram attack failed to disperse the light blob. Instead, it increased the power of the light blob. He immediately knew that it might have been caused by his power. After pondering for a moment, Xinluo gathered his power and charged at Zhou Wen. No matter what the light blob was, he just needed to kill Zhou Wen before it appeared and then leave the forbidden land of gods. One of his hands was holding the primordial trigram, while the other hand was grabbing at Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen instantly felt a strong suction force pulling the chaos egg to his palm. Just as Zhou Wen was thinking about how to deal with it, his eyes suddenly lit up. There was a bright light in the sky. A beam of light suddenly came down from the light blob. It was like a bolt of lightning that struck Xinluo's head. Xinluo was shocked, but he couldn't dodge the lightning. He could only gather his power to resist it. The lightning struck Xinluo's head, but it didn't produce any sparks or electric currents. Instead, Xinluo's body trembled and his legs went limp. He fell to the ground. The Khanate energy in his body disappeared in an instant. The Khanate trigram in his hand dimmed and stopped spinning because it lost the support of the Khanate energy. It returned to the stone talisman and fell to the ground. The light blob in the sky became even more dazzling. Another bolt of lightning struck down. Xinluo's expression changed drastically. He quickly gathered his power again, but he didn't have any strength left. It was too late for him to dodge. He could only summon a bird-shaped companion beast to block the attack. The lightning seemed to have a life of its own. It made a turn and struck Fallen God. Xinluo's innate essence qi had been sucked dry. This time, when the lightning landed on his body, it disappeared just like last time. However, the change in Xinluo's body this time was not as simple as the disappearance of essence qi. Xinluo, who was originally quite handsome, had his hair turn white in an instant. His face was full of wrinkles, and his eyes became extremely turbid. His vitality became extremely low, and he looked like an old man with one foot in the grave. When the crowd saw this, they were all shocked. The powerful Xinluo had only withstood 2 bolts of lightning, yet he was reduced to such a state. This was simply unheard of. Yukai and Carlos turned around and ran. Who knew if the ball of light would target them after killing Fallen God? Even Xinluo could not withstand the power of 2 lightning bolts. They were afraid that they would not be able to withstand even one. 9 sons. Save me. The old Fallen God was really like an old man. He struggled to stand up, but it was very difficult. He used all his strength to call for help in the direction of 9 sons, but he could only make an extremely weak and hoarse voice. The 3rd lightning bolt had already struck down. 9 sons' body shone brightly, condensing the sun's divine light, and attacked the lightning bolt that descended from the sky. However, the lightning seemed to have targeted Fallen God. Before it collided with the sun's divine light, it strangely disappeared. When 9 sons saw it again, the lightning bolt had actually landed on Fallen God's body. When the 3rd lightning bolt landed, Fallen God let out a scream. The flesh on his body shriveled at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. A layer of withered old skin clung tightly to his bones. He was almost no different from a skeleton. However, Fallen God did not die just like that. His eyes protruded abnormally because his skin and flesh had shrunk. His eyes were filled with fear and despair. With his current body, it was difficult for him to even crawl. He could only wait for death. Zhou Wen's heart skipped a beat when he saw this. After all, he was at the Hell stage. After using the Khanate line, he was already comparable to the Heaven stage, but he had ended up in such a state in a moment. Zhou Wen wasn't pitying him, but when he thought of Fallen God's outcome, he felt uncomfortable. It was very likely that he had been harmed by Jinx's master. The Tiger Soul General had always followed him in the past. Furthermore, he had an even more powerful bamboo blade that had dueled Jinx's master. He was considered lucky that nothing had happened to him. In the past, he only thought that Jinx's master would have some effects, but at most, it would be a bloody disaster. It wouldn't really result in death. However, this was the first time he had seen Fallen God in such a state. To be honest, Zhou Wen's heart trembled and his legs went limp. Although it's a pity, it's not entirely a bad thing if the Tiger Soul General dies with Fallen God, Zhou Wen thought. He originally wondered if he should find an opportunity to take back the Tiger Soul General, but after seeing Fallen God's death, Zhou Wen felt that he should cherish his life and distance himself from Jinx's master. After losing the Tiger Soul General at the mortal stage, he could still get other companion beasts, but if he couldn't withstand Jinx's master, it wouldn't be as simple as losing a companion beast. His life would be over. Now, Zhou Wen was already considering if he should think of a way to get Bamboo Blade out. It was too terrifying. He didn't want to end up like Fallen God. However, now wasn't the time to think about this. Zhou Wen's reaction was the same as Carlos and company. He turned around and prepared to run. Who knew if that thing would make him its next target after killing Fallen God? Fallen God had the Tiger Soul General, and he also had Bamboo Blade. They were all lethal items. Just as Zhou Wen was about to run, he heard a rumble. An explosive sound came from the blob of light as another bolt of lightning struck down. Zhou Wen originally imagined that the bolt of lightning would kill Fallen God, but to his surprise, the bolt of lightning didn't strike Fallen God. Instead, it struck him. Holy sh*t. Zhou Wen was so frightened that his soul flew out of his body. He immediately teleported away in a bid to dodge the bolt of lightning. However, it was useless. While he was still teleporting, the bolt of lightning had already struck him, sending him out of his teleportation state. Zhou Wen was once again struck out in an instant. No matter how strong his opponents were in the past, they would at most be able to knock him to the ground before or after he teleported. He had never encountered such a situation. When the dying Fallen God saw that Zhou Wen had been struck by lightning, there seemed to be a hint of joy in his despair. "Follow me to hell." Fallen God gritted his teeth, his hoarse voice almost inaudible. Chapter 1587. Zhou Wen felt his heart skip a beat. He could only place his hopes on the Chaos Egg, hoping that it could withstand the power of the lightning. However, in an instant, Zhou Wen felt a chill run down his spine. The power of the lightning seeped into the Chaos Egg and struck him. Even the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder and truth listener, which had been activated ahead of time, were useless. Zhou Wen shivered as the Chaos Egg automatically dissipated, exposing his body. "I'm doomed." Zhou Wen's body and mind trembled as he felt his calves and stomach cramp. He was only a human, so he was afraid of death, much less like Shenluo. He wanted to resist, but he realized that the essence energy in his body had been sucked away by the lightning that had invaded his body. The essence chi was like iron powder, and the lightning was like a magnet. It was sucked clean in an instant, leaving nothing behind. Without essence energy, Zhou Wen couldn't do anything. He couldn't even throw the demonic neonate in his arms. Now, Zhou Wen finally knew what it felt like when Shenluo was struck. It was no wonder Shenluo didn't have a chance to resist. If it were Zhou Wen, he wouldn't have a chance to resist either. Zhou Wen could sense that after the lightning sucked his essence energy, it retreated like the receding tide. However, before it could leave Zhou Wen's body, the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder on his wheel of destiny automatically lit up without the support of his essence energy. The lightning that was retreating at high speed actually stopped. As though it had been attracted, it headed for the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. Zhou Wen was pleasantly surprised. Although he had previously discovered that the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder could attract the light dots, Zhou felt that it was very likely that the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder couldn't withstand such terrifying energy after seeing Shenluo's outcome. The lightning surged into the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, and it automatically opened. Some strange words gradually appeared on the blank page. Zhou didn't recognize any of the words, but for some reason, he could vaguely understand their meaning. Shenluo lay on the ground, panting with great difficulty. However, his eyes were staring intently at Zhou, unwilling to take his last breath. It was as though he was waiting for Zhou to walk the path to the netherworld with him. Nine Yang looked at Zhou, who had been struck by lightning. After a moment of silence, he extended his hand and took out something. It was a strange bead that looked like a tiny sun. With the divine pearl in hand, the sun-divine light on Nine Yang's body intensified. He stared at Zhou as though he wanted to do something. Another bolt of lightning fell. The 9 suns shone with divine light, making it hard to see anything in the surrounding area. The powerful divine light of the sun bombarded the lightning. 9 suns. What are you doing? Cough, cough. Shenluo screamed hysterically. He coughed up blood with all his might. He is my opponent. Even if he dies, he will die by my hands, 9 suns replied calmly. However, just as he said that, 9 suns' expression changed drastically. The sun divine light, which was augmented by the holy artifact, still failed to block that bolt of lightning. The lightning vanished like a ghost. When it appeared again, it had already struck Zhou. At the sight of this, Shenluo laughed maniacally. His face was as hideous as a demon's. But soon, Shenluo's smile froze on his face. When he was struck by the second bolt of lightning, his body rapidly aged and he lost his vitality. However, the same thing didn't happen to Zhou after he was struck by the second bolt of lightning. Not only did Zhou's aura not weaken, but it also seemed to become stronger. It was as though an invisible force was bursting forth from his body. Nine Yang was slightly taken aback. He stopped in his tracks and stood there looking at Zhou. Rumble! A series of explosive sounds came from the ball of light in the sky. Bolts of lightning formed a thunderstorm that continuously struck Zhou. Zhou's entire body seemed to be bathed in lightning, but his body didn't decline like Shenluo's. Instead, his aura became stronger and stronger. Impossible! Impossible! Shenluo widened his eyes as though he had gone mad. He shouted angrily, but his voice was so hoarse that it was hard to hear. Words kept appearing on the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder in Zhou's body. Every bolt of lightning that entered it would form some words on the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. The shape of the words was strange, but one could understand their meaning at a glance. From the looks of it, that thing is indeed the domain core that was shattered back then. Furthermore, it happens to be compatible with my heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. It sure benefited me. Zhou felt mixed emotions as he instantly went from hell to heaven. Zhou didn't know if this was considered luck. Although he had already discovered that the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder could absorb the light spots, he wouldn't have had the chance to absorb them if Shenluo hadn't drawn out the shattered domain core. I wonder what the domain core looked like before it was shattered. Zhou stared at the blob of light in the sky and realized that it was gradually shrinking. The blob of light clearly wasn't the true appearance of the domain core. It was just an amalgamation of fragments. It was impossible to know what the true domain core looked like. Unless he could encounter the ancient experts who had participated in the battle back then, it would be very difficult to know what the core looked like. Zhou was actually still somewhat puzzled. The domain core was already so terrifying in its shattered state. It could easily kill Shenluo, who had a holy artifact. How strong was it when it was complete? To be able to attract so many experts to compete for it, the domain core was clearly extraordinary. More and more words appeared on the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. Finally, it began to condense the domain's power. Zhou could sense that the power of the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder was constructing a nomological domain. Zhou's body floated in the air as a strange force spread out with his body as the center. This was because the original ancient city ruins were nearby. The ancient city ruins within the domain's range were undergoing strange changes. The broken walls, stone pillars, and ground were like a movie playing in reverse, restoring their original appearance. The weathered wall bricks were gradually mended, and the broken parts of the stone pillars appeared out of thin air. The entire ancient city seemed to be reversing time. Zhou, is he condensing a domain to advance to the calamity stage? Carlos couldn't move his eyes away from the magical and strange scene. They hadn't run far when they realized that something was amiss. When they turned back and saw this scene, they were stunned. Zhou, he seems to have a pure human body. Yu Kai sized up Zhou's body as his expression turned even odder. It wasn't only Yu Kai. Nine Yang also realized the same problem. Zhou didn't have any traces of spirit casting, nor did he have the characteristics of a dimensional creature after using the mythical fluid. No matter how he looked at it, he was a pure human. A pure-blooded human advancing to the calamity stage? Nine Yang stood there in a daze as he looked at Zhou. Chapter 1588. Nine Sons had always imagined that Zhou had used some method to advance to the calamity grade. Now, he suddenly realized that Zhou was condensing a domain. Furthermore, it was completely different from what he had imagined. Zhou seemed to be a pure-blooded human without any external help. Can a pure-blooded human really reach this step? Nine Sons looked at Zhou with a complicated look in his eyes. Godfall's expression became even more complicated. He didn't have much blood to vomit, or he would have vomited 3 liters of blood. He had already been killed by the lightning, but Zhou had also been struck by lightning. He was about to advance to the calamity grade. There was no justice in this world. It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this. Godfall couldn't calm the resentment in his heart. He used his last breath to order the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General to kill Zhou. Even if he couldn't kill Zhou, it was fine if he could prevent his advancement to the calamity grade. The fiend-armored Tiger Soul General accepted the order and turned to look at Zhou. The purple flames in his eyes constantly pulsed, but he didn't immediately charge over. Godfall believed that his vitality had been severed and that he was about to die, so his connection with his companion beast had weakened. All he did was urge the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. The fiend-armored Tiger Soul General received Godfall's repeated orders, but he still didn't charge at Zhou. He slowly turned around and walked towards Shenluo. "You! What are you doing? I told you to kill him!" Godfall roared at the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. He didn't know what had happened. Why would the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General walk in front of him? He had clearly ordered the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General to kill Zhou. Why was the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General walking back? Godfall was puzzled. At the same time, he seemed to realize something. He immediately sensed the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General's information again. Ferocious fiend. Heaven-defying life slayer. Jinx's master. What kind of F***king companion beast is this? Only then did Godfall realize that something was amiss with the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. Be it his life providence, life soul, wheel of destiny, terror transformation, calamity domain, or skills, they were all very amiss. Looking at them individually, it might not be much, but looking at them all together, Godfall shuddered. He had never seen a companion beast with such ferocious and evil attribute. Coupled with the heaven-defying life-severing domain and Jinx's master skill, Godfallen suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He opened his mouth to ask Nine Sons for help. However, just as he opened his mouth, The spear in the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General's hand slashed across his neck. His head was sent flying. This unforeseen event stunned everyone. Nine Yang never expected that God Fallen would be killed by his own companion beast. He looked at the Tiger Soul General that was still dripping blood with the spear in his hand. His face was filled with shock. Carlos, am I dreaming? Wasn't that companion beast snatched away by Godfall? His master should be Shenluo, right? Yu Kai rubbed his eyes in disbelief. You aren't dreaming. I saw it too. He should be Fallen God's companion beast now. He did kill Fallen God, Carlos said with a strange expression. A companion beast killing its owner? How could such a thing happen? Also, if Master dies, he should be annihilated as well, right? Yu Kai's mind was filled with question marks. Shenluo's head fell to the ground. His eyes were about to pop out. It was obvious how unwilling he was to die. The companion beast tattoo on his body dissipated with his death, turning into essence energy that returned to the universe. However, the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General still stood proudly on its mount without any signs of dissipating. This strange scene left the few of them shuddering. If companion beasts could kill their owners, they had so many companion beasts on them. If a companion beast were to stab them one day, they wouldn't even know how they died. There was no way to defend against it. The blob of light in the sky became smaller and smaller. The domain power emitted by Zhou Wen's body became stronger and stronger. The ancient city in the nearby area recovered faster and faster. Ancient buildings were standing up out of thin air, gradually restoring the ancient city's original appearance. Strange. Could it be that the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder's domain is a time reversal domain? Zhou Wen was somewhat puzzled. The power that the domain displayed now resembled the reversal of time. However, the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder had nothing to do with the power of time. From the beginning until now, it had never used a time elemental item to advance. No, it's not the time elemental. Zhou Wen quickly discovered a problem. If time was reversed, it wouldn't only be the ancient city that was restored. Everything in the ancient city would also be restored. Zhou Wen didn't know if there were any residents in the ancient city in the past, but there were definitely creatures that destroyed the ancient city. If time was reversed, the creatures that destroyed the ancient city should have appeared in the reversal of time. Now, only the ancient city was recovering. There were no creatures that destroyed the ancient city. Furthermore, if one took a closer look, they would realize that many places in the domain didn't change because of the domain's power. Only the ancient city had changed. What kind of domain is this? Zhou Wen kept sensing the domain's power, but he still couldn't understand what kind of domain it was. The power of a domain was composed of two parts. One was the essence energy art one cultivated, including the life providence, life soul, wheel of destiny, and terra transformation formed during the cultivation process of the essence energy art. These had a certain impact on the domain's abilities. Another important component was the domain core that was absorbed. Zhou Wen could sense the essence energy art, but he had no way of knowing what kind of power the domain core gave the domain. He also needed to constantly explore the domain's abilities. From the fact that the domain core had heavily injured Godfall, its power should be something like devouring or absorbing. However, now that Zhou Wen had absorbed the domain core's power, it produced an effect similar to the reversal of time. This made Zhou Wen momentarily unable to determine what kind of ability the domain condensed by the Tao Sutra had. Zhou Wen also thought of another possibility. If the essence energy art and the domain core combined to produce a domain, there would be some special reaction. It might also trigger a domain ability that was different from the two. Just like a chemical reaction, the combination of two different substances would form a new substance. Of course, this was only Zhou Wen's guess. It might not be a new ability. It was just that Zhou Wen didn't know much about the domain core's abilities. Boom. There was only an extremely small portion of the blob of light left. This portion transformed into a huge pillar of light that blasted at Zhou. As the pillar of light descended on Zhou, the entire forbidden land of gods began to tremble as though there was a huge earthquake. The ground cracked open, hundreds of kilometers long, and everything collapsed. The buildings in Sunset City collapsed one by one. Furthermore, a huge rift appeared beneath the city. Half of the city had already fallen, and the remaining parts were constantly sliding down. The darkness in the sky was like a curtain that had been cut open. It was peeling off piece by piece, revealing the original blue sky. The entire forbidden land of God's domain was collapsing. So to advance to the calamity grade, I need the power of a dimensional zone as the price. Carlos seemed to understand something. Chapter 1589. Yukai was rejoicing. Thankfully, you forcefully moved the people in Sunset City away. Otherwise, there probably wouldn't be many people in Sunset City who could survive such a calamity. The forbidden land of gods collapsed more and more violently. Carlos and Yukai didn't dare stay any longer. They turned around and rushed towards the exit of the forbidden land of gods. Thankfully, Carlos's guardian was already at the terror grade. Otherwise, he didn't even know if he could escape this disaster alive. The entire forbidden land of gods was collapsing. Only the area around Zhou remained relatively normal. The ancient city had almost been restored. The ancient city had a mysterious and quaint aura. The buildings were made of rocks and had a very simple style. There were basically no decorations. Occasionally, one could see some extremely simple drawings on the walls. The drawings were also abstract objects such as mountains and rivers. Was this ancient city built by humans, or is it an ancient city that exists in the dimensional zone itself? Zhou guessed. However, just as he was sizing up the ancient city, it suddenly shattered and turned into ashes that rose into the sky. When the ashes flew into the air, they vanished. When the ancient city completely vanished, the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder finally completed its evolution and reached the calamity grade. The domain's power had also completely taken shape. I've finally advanced to the calamity grade. Zhou heaved a long sigh of relief. This was a pleasant surprise. He originally thought that this trip had been for nothing, but he never expected to accidentally raise the Tao Sutra to the calamity grade and condense a calamity domain. However, up to now, Zhou still didn't know much about the calamity domain's abilities. He needed more time to understand it before he could know what kind of domain it was. The dark forbidden land of gods no longer existed. The sky was blue and the sun shone down. There were crisscrossing abysses everywhere. Just as Zhou was rejoicing, he saw a purple light rush towards him. He looked up and saw that it was the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. What's going on? Shouldn't he have perished with fallen gods? Zhou had been paying attention to the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder and the newly formed domain. He didn't pay attention to the situation outside the domain, so he didn't see what had happened. Upon seeing Xunluo's corpse on the ground, the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General charged at him. He was somewhat surprised. Just as he was about to block the Tiger Soul General's charge, he saw the tiger leap up. The fiend-armored Tiger Soul General transformed into a purple flame that flew towards Zhou. It was useless even if Zhou wanted to block it. The fiend-armored Tiger Soul General transformed back into a tattoo and imprinted itself on Zhou's body in its original spot. Holy sh*T. This. What's going on? A companion beast doesn't die with its owner. It can even return by itself. Zhou was truly alarmed. Looking at the headless corpse that was sliding down the valley, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Could Godfall's head have been chopped off by the Tiger Soul General?" "He was the one who chopped it off," Nine Yang said as he stood not far from Zhou. "Was it really slashed by the Tiger Soul General?" Zhou was even more alarmed. Not only were others afraid of such a companion beast, but he was also a little afraid. The companion beast was one with him. If he fell asleep and the Tiger Soul General ran out of his body and chopped off his head, he would die an unjust death. Zhou was momentarily at a loss for what to do. The Tiger Soul General couldn't be closed or thrown away. Unless he could make the Tiger Soul General die in battle, it was almost impossible to escape him. It was equally difficult to make the Tiger Soul General die in battle. This fellow became stronger the more he fought. If he really brought him to a particularly dangerous place, Zhou might die before he died. Zhou, are you a pure-blooded human? Nine Yang stared at Zhou and asked. Although the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General was very strange, Nine Yang wasn't very interested in him. Instead, it was Zhou who touched Nine Yang. I think so. Zhou looked at his body and didn't discover anything different from humans. After receiving Zhou Wen's affirmative answer, Nine Yang's expression turned even more complicated. Can you tell me how pure-blooded humans advance to the mythical stage? Although Nine Yang knew that Zhou Wen probably wouldn't give him an answer, he couldn't help but ask. Up to now, all the human experts at the mythical stage and above he knew, apart from Zhou Wen, had relied on some external force. The education Nine Yang had received since he was young and what he had seen and heard made him believe that it was impossible for pure-blooded humans to advance to the mythical stage. The teachings of the temple clearly stated that humans were sinners of the world. They had been punished by God and were born with flaws. It was impossible for humans to advance to the mythical stage. However, Zhou Wen in front of him made Nine Yang doubt the teachings of the temple for the first time. With 9 life providences and 9 life souls, it's possible to advance to the mythical stage. Of course, it's only a possibility. The chances are very low, and the chances of failure are very high, Zhou Wen unexpectedly answered Nine Yang. In fact, this wasn't a secret. This was because Xia Zhihuang had previously tried this method. Furthermore, Jing Daoxian had told Xia Zhihuang this method, so Jing Daoxian definitely knew about it. Zhou Wen didn't believe that the other families wouldn't have any news. However, no one could do it. Apart from Xia Zhihuang, who had used such an inhumane forbidden spell, no one else could gather 9 life providences and 9 life souls. You have 9 life providences and life souls? Nine Yang was stunned as he looked at Zhou Wen in disbelief. Guess, Zhou Wen said with a smile. Zhou Wen said with a smile. Suddenly, he teleported to another place, grabbed the innate Yao that had fallen to the ground, and teleported away, disappearing in a flash. He had already achieved his goal of coming here. There was no need to waste any more time here. Furthermore, he had no interest in continuing the battle with Nine Yang. Nine Yang was very strong, but he had already been seen through by Zhou Wen. As a result, he had comprehended non-contention sword intent. There was no point in continuing the battle. Furthermore, he had no intention of killing Nine Yang. Previously, when the lightning descended, Nine Yang had wanted to help him block it. Regardless of his reason, Zhou Wen wasn't willing to kill him now. As for the Khanate Yao, Zhou Wen was still very interested in it. Shenluo could use the power of the Khanate Yao to reach the Heaven Realm. It was obvious that it was at least a Heaven Realm item. Nine Yang didn't snatch the Khanate Yao because it was useless to him. He couldn't activate the power of the Khanate Yao. Also, before Shenluo died, Nine Yang wasn't willing to touch the Khanate Yao. Otherwise, it would easily cause a misunderstanding between the Khanate Holy Temple and the Sun Holy Temple. Later on, Shenluo's death and Zhou Wen's advancement to the Calamity Realm as a pure-blooded human gave Nine Yang a huge shock. For a moment, he didn't think of the Khanate Yao that had fallen to the side. Of course, the main reason was that it was useless to him. Therefore, Nine Yang didn't take the Khanate Yao to heart. Zhou Wen was different. It was the Khanate Yao that caused the domain core fragment to appear. Zhou Wen felt that he might be able to use the Khanate Yao. Chapter 1590. Zhou Wen carried demonic neonate back to Guide City. After Shenluo's death, The Holy Land probably wouldn't seek trouble with him so quickly. After all, there weren't many existences like Shunluo and 9 Suns in the Holy Land. Otherwise, the Holy Land would have long controlled the entire Federation. However, with Earth's rapid mutation, there would definitely be more and more trouble in the future. Zhou also felt that he had to find a dimensional zone to build a city as soon as possible. Otherwise, any natural calamity could wipe out all the humans in Guide City. I wonder how Li Xian and company are doing. Have they found the dimensional zone that Xia Xianyue mentioned? Zhou played with the Kanake Yao in his hand. From Zhou's point of view, this was a stone talisman. He could sense the mysterious energy within, but he didn't know how to trigger it. He attempted to use the power of the Tao Sutra to power the stone talisman. After all, the core of the Tao Sutra's domain was drawn out by the stone talisman. However, Zhou was quickly disappointed. He realized that the stone talisman repelled the Tao Sutra's essence energy. Only then did he understand. The stone talisman could trigger the domain's core fragment not because of mutual attraction, but because of the power that countered it. In layman's terms, it was the enmity between enemies. Therefore, the Kanate Yao was able to draw out the core fragment. And the core fragment had targeted Shunluo, who held the Kanate Yao. Shunluo had died unjustly. Never in his dreams did he imagine that he would run to a dimensional zone that restrained him and the Kanate Yao. If the dimensional zone was intact, Shunluo would have long discovered this problem. Unfortunately, the dimensional zone was in a half-crippled state. Its core had been shattered, and Shunluo never expected such a situation. Zhou tried a few more essence energy arts, but he was unable to trigger the power of the Kanate Yao. All he could do was put it away and take out his phone to study a new domain. Calamity domain, master domain, human level, teacher domain, the domain of education. What kind of domain is the master domain? Could it be a domain for being a teacher? Zhou read the introduction of the master domain, but he still didn't understand what kind of domain it was. He knew the word enlightenment, but he couldn't figure out how a domain could enlighten others. Could it be that a domain can teach people physics and chemistry, as well as singing and dancing? Zhou imagined the scene and a dark cloud immediately appeared over his head. No, I have to figure it out first. Just as Zhou was about to switch on his phone and find a dungeon to study Shiryu's powers, he heard the door open. The little bear stuck out its tongue and ran over excitedly. It pounced on Zhou and extended its tongue to lick his face, leaving it drooling. Zhou hurriedly hugged the bear and calmed it down before wiping the saliva off his face. When Little Bear saw Zhou, it appeared abnormally excited. From time to time, it would nudge Zhou, preventing him from using his phone. All he could do was put it away. Has the matter with 9 Suns been resolved? Li Xian walked in and said with a smile. No, I don't know when they will come again, so you have to speed up. Find a dimensional zone suitable for building a city. It's best if it's a dimensional zone that even calamity creatures can't enter without our permission, Zhou said. Li Xian immediately wore a bitter expression when he heard Zhou say that. It's not like you don't know how strange the dimensional zones near Guide City are. I've recently explored all the nearby dimensional zones that I can enter. I nearly lost my life, but I didn't find a suitable place to build a city. Do you think Xia Xianyue is pulling our leg? Perhaps there aren't any dimensional zones, she mentioned. If there are, it's impossible for there to be no clues at all. Zhou shook his head. I don't think so. She's here to cooperate. There's no benefit in lying to us, and we don't lose anything. If there's really no other way, give her some benefit. If it's really suitable for building a city, it won't be a loss. It's better than being passive like now, right? Li Xian said. If we really can't find it, that's all we can do. By the way, which dimensional zones can't you enter? List them out. I'll take a look first. Zhou still planned on taking a look himself. Furthermore, if he looked at more dimensional zones, he might be able to find a domain core. I've saved it. I'll send it to you directly. Li Xian took out his phone and sent a message to Zhouwen. Zhouwen took out his phone and took a look. Man, there were more than 10-dimensional zones with addresses behind them. It looked like Li Xian had put in a lot of effort. These can't be entered? Zhouwen was somewhat puzzled. With Li Xian's abilities, was it that difficult to enter a dimensional zone? It wasn't like he was asking him to take down the dimensional zone. Don't you know how strange the dimensional zones in this crappy place are? Li Xian rolled his eyes at him and said unhappily, Alright, I'll go take a look first. Zhouwen stood up and prepared to leave. When he reached the door, he seemed to think of something and stopped to look at Li Xian. Why are you looking at me? Have you never seen a handsome guy before? Li Xian grumbled as he felt a little uncomfortable from Zhouwen's gaze. Do you recognize this? Zhouwen took out the connate trigram and pinched its tip with his finger before raising it in front of Li Xian. Li Xian's cultivation foundation was also the invincible connate divine art. Although it was only an incomplete product, he could be considered half a member of the connate holy temple. Perhaps he could use this item. This thing looks a little familiar. Let me think. Li Xian pondered for a moment before slapping his thigh and saying, I've seen this before. Where have you seen it before? Zhouwen was alarmed. He imagined that Li Xian knew what the stone talisman was. You still want to test me? Don't you know that your brother Xian knows everything about astronomy and geography? This is a magatama, right? It's something from overseas. In the past, Li Mabai brought some back from overseas. It's called a divine artifact, but it's actually useless. It's just an ornament, Li Xian said. Have you seen such a mark on a magatama? Zhouwen unhappily pointed at the horizontal mark on the connate trigram. Li Xian took another careful look and said in puzzlement, I've never seen such a magatama before. Typically, a magatama should have a hole drilled at the head. This one doesn't have a hole, so why is it a horizontal one? This is called a trigram. The long one is called a yang trigram, and the short one is called a yin trigram. You don't know the 6 trigrams, but have you seen the 8 trigrams? Zhouwen threw the connate trigram to Li Xian. I got it from the connate holy temple's saints. It seems that only saints who haven't cultivated the invincible connate divine art can activate its power. Give it a try and see if you can use it. Then I'll give it a try. Li Xian caught the connate trigram and circulated his essence energy art, attempting to inject his essence energy into it. Chapter 1591. Li Xian's face flushed red, but the connate Yao didn't react at all. Old Zhou, don't tell me you picked up a rock by the side of the road to trick me? Li Xian asked Zhouwen suspiciously. I don't have that much free time. Zhouwen retracted the connate Yao and curled his lips. It must be because you can't practice it well. Otherwise, why can't you use it when the connate holy temple's saints can use it? TCH, I don't care about it. What's so good about the connate holy temple? I want to create a path that belongs to me. I'll defeat all those connate holy disciples and let them know who's the true connate holy temple. Your brother Xian likes to walk his own path, leaving others with nowhere to go. Li Xian wore an expression that said he didn't care. Alright, I'll go take a look at those dimensional zones. Zhouwen couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on him as he walked out the door. The little bear twisted its butt as it followed behind him. After Zhouwen left, Li Xian cursed in a low voice. What crappy thing is this? How dare it discriminate against me? When I destroy the connate holy temple in the future, no one will be allowed to cultivate the invincible connate divine art again. I'll make you never be used by others and turn you into useless trash. It wasn't that Li Xian didn't want it, but that he really didn't have the ability to. His invincible connate divine art was impure. Few people in the connate holy temple who practiced the original version could use the connate Yao, much less this pirated version. Zhouwen looked at the little bear beside him, and had a nagging feeling that something was up, but he couldn't recall what it was. Strange, why do I feel like I've forgotten something? Zhouwen frowned in thought, but no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out what was missing. Yer was in the family, and the chick was still evolving into a calamity. The antelope had been following Yer and hadn't followed him. This was also the reason why Zhouwen was at ease letting Yer stay in the family. With the antelope by Yer's side, even if he encountered an opponent so powerful that he couldn't match it, the antelope could escape with Yer. Zhouwen thought carefully, but he still couldn't figure out what was missing. He opened the chaos space and did another inventory. At this point, Zhouwen immediately realized that he had forgotten something. The two sisters, Liz and Lim, were still in the chaos space. How could I forget about them? Seeing that there was no one around, Zhouwen decided to let them out. Master. After Liz and Lena came out, they immediately bowed to Zhouwen. They had been locked up for so long, but they didn't show any resentment. Get up. From now on, you aren't allowed to call me. It was fine in No Regret City, but if Liz and Lim were to be seen calling him Master in the Federation, it would be a huge joke. Demon King. Liz and Lim wanted to call him again, but Liz and Lim stopped them. Don't call me Lord Demon King either. In the future, call me Zhouwen. This is an order. Zhouwen knew that it was impossible to reason with them, so he said directly. When the two sisters stood up, they realized that there were all sorts of plants everywhere. There were also all sorts of insects and beasts shuttling through the forest. Birds were flying in the sky. Little Bear, who was still by Zhouwen's side, was momentarily stunned. They, who had lived in a regretless city, had never seen such a scene before. They thought this was heaven. Is this heaven? Liz and Lim muttered to themselves blankly. Of course not. Humans are in dire straits and can die at any moment. If this is heaven, I doubt anyone would be willing to go to heaven after death, Zhouwen thought. Sorry. Only then did Liz and Lim recall that their master was the Demon King. How could they mention heaven in front of him? They hurriedly apologized. This place is the same as of Regretless City. There are many humans here, but the humans here are different from the humans in Regretless City. Many of the humans here are very evil and can kill you at any moment. Therefore, if you encounter other humans in the future, don't casually talk to them, much less tell anyone that you are from Regretless City. In the future, you have to listen to my orders. Zhouwen told them some things so that they could slowly adapt to life on Earth. Liz and Lim listened to Zhouwen's teaching seriously and memorized every word he said. Liz, release your blessing halo. After Zhouwen told them everything he could think of, he thought of Liz's abilities and wanted to see what use her blessing halo had. Liz's life providence and life soul were blessing powers, while Lim's was curse powers. Both were very useful. Yes, Zhouwen. Liz immediately used her life soul. A circular halo appeared beneath Liz's feet. It was like a circle of lotus flower patterns slowly blooming. Standing near her, one could clearly sense a strange power inject into their bodies. The closer they were to Liz, the clearer the feeling became. Although this power didn't enhance his physique, it made Zhouwen feel comfortable. What's the use of your blessing halo? Zhouwen asked. I can find more when I'm searching for stone root grass, Liz answered shyly. How pitiful! In such a place, no matter how good your talent and abilities are, it's a waste. Zhouwen led Liz and Lim to the nearby dimensional zones. Firstly, he could search the dimensional zones, and secondly, he could give it a try and see how much help the blessing halo could give him. Zhouwen actually didn't have much hope. After all, Liz's level was too low. She was only at the epic stage. Zhouwen didn't hope for her blessing halo to be strong. He just wanted it to be of practical use. In the future, if he had a chance to advance to the Calamity grade, a large-scale blessing domain would be truly impressive. Of course, it depended on whether Liz and Lim had any other thoughts after coming to Earth. Zhouwen didn't plan on nurturing them now. Following the direction indicated on the map, Zhouwen didn't walk for long when he suddenly saw a white companion egg the size of an ostrich egg on the grass in front of him. Its shell was like porcelain. It can't be? The blessing halo is that useful? I can even pick up a companion egg while walking. Zhouwen used Truth Listener to scan his surroundings, but he didn't discover any ambushes or other creatures. I really hit the jackpot? Zhouwen took out his phone and snapped a picture of the companion beast. It was really a companion egg. Chapter 1592. Sky Immortal Goose, Calamity, Evolvable, Life Providence, Sky Immortal Life Soul, Swan Wheel of Destiny, Sky Immortal Wings Terror Form, Sky Immortal Transformation, Calamity Domain, Charm Domain, Mortal, Strength, 100 Speed, 100 Constitution, 100 Essence Energy, 100 Talent Skill, Flying Immortal Skill, Skybird's Traversal, Bewitching Dance, Swan Roar Companion Form. Wings, is the effect of the blessing halo that powerful? Just by activating the halo, I actually picked up a Calamity-grade companion egg that can evolve. What would happen if I were to drive it for 8 to 10 hours? Zhouwen was puzzled. He felt that something was amiss. If the blessing halo was really that impressive, Liz wouldn't have led such a miserable life in Regretless City. After all, a blessing is just a blessing. It's not luck. Even Wang Lu, who has so many lucky companion beasts, doesn't have such good luck. Furthermore, Liz's blessing halo is only at the epic stage. Zhouwen felt that there was a problem, but he had already used Truth Listener to scan the surroundings several times and didn't discover any problems. In a radius of more than 5 kilometers, apart from some ordinary birds and beasts, there weren't any dimensional creatures. The nearby dimensional zones were very quiet. No dimensional creatures that broke the restrictions appeared. There's no reason for me to leave such a high-level companion egg unpicked, right? Zhouwen made up his mind and summoned the dragon-imprisoned armor to wear. Then, he carefully came to the side of the companion egg and probed it before picking it up. Nothing happened. Zhouwen successfully obtained the companion egg and sized up his surroundings, but he didn't discover any abnormal movements. Even walls can't stop my luck. I managed to pick up a Calamity-grade companion beast that can evolve. Zhouwen was extremely delighted. In the past, he had worked himself to death to kill Calamity-grade creatures, but he might not even get a companion egg to drop. Now, he had picked one up along the way. Zhouwen held the companion egg and looked around before wiping it on his body. He muttered to himself, "If I had known that the blessing halo was so useful, I would have released Liz long ago." Since there was no one around, Zhouwen slapped the companion egg into the game and hatched it in-game. Soon, a beautiful white swan appeared in front of Zhouwen. Moments later, the white swan transformed into a pair of snow-white wings that appeared behind Zhouwen. With a gentle flap of his wings, Zhouwen instantly appeared in the distance. This winged companion beast augments my flight speed greatly. Zhouwen was even more delighted. He continued on his journey with Liz and Lim, getting Liz to activate the blessing halo the entire way. Zhouwen thought to himself, if I can pick up Calamity-grade companion eggs with the blessing halo on, even if it's one every hour, it'll be awesome. With this thought in mind, he walked all the way to the dimensional zone, but he didn't pick up anything. Not to mention a Calamity-grade companion egg. He didn't even see a legendary companion egg. Looks like that was just a coincidence. It wasn't the blessing halo's ability. Zhouwen wasn't an insatiable person. He was already very satisfied to be able to pick up a Calamity-grade companion egg. He focused all his energy on the dimensional zone in front of him. This dimensional zone was a river. In the past, this was the old course of the Yellow River. Due to the Yellow River's change of course, this place had almost dried up. However, after the dimensional storms, this place was once again filled with water. Furthermore, no matter how deep he dived, he couldn't reach the bottom of the river. What was even more terrifying was that even a lifebuoy would sink if placed in the river. Many people didn't come out after diving in. To this day, no one knew what was at the bottom of the river. There were definitely dimensional zones in the river, but no one knew what kind of dimensional zone it was. There were two types of legends that were more well known. One was that there were water ghosts under the Yellow River dimensional zone. People who entered the river would be dragged down by the water ghosts as scapegoats. Although there were different versions of the water ghost legend, that was the general idea. Another type was that legend had it that there was an ancient city buried under the old Yellow River. The ancient city under the river was the true dimensional zone. All sorts of legends were a little exaggerated, but no one had really seen the water ghost or the ancient city. Furthermore, most people who entered the river had vanished. Although Li Xian had an undying body, he wasn't good at swimming. If he really entered the water, even if he didn't drown, it would be very difficult for him to escape. Therefore, Li Xian didn't dare enter the dimensional zone to investigate. Zhou was still good at swimming. He had specially practiced primordial energy skills in the water. His combat strength in the water wasn't much weaker than on land. Therefore, he chose the Yellow River as his first stop. After Zhou came here, he originally wanted to go down to take a look to see if there was a legendary ancient city. If there really was a legendary ancient city at the bottom of the river, he might be able to create an underwater city similar to Atlantis. Perhaps he could even become famous in the future and become a new underwater city legend. However, just as he approached the Yellow River, Zhou saw that in the middle of the river water seemed to be boiling. It was bubbling. What happened? Zhou frowned slightly. He had never heard of such a thing happening in the Yellow River. He had only heard that the river's surface was as calm as stagnant water. Even a lifebuoy couldn't float. However, the bubbles that kept rising in the middle looked like they were about to boil. It didn't look like calm, stagnant water. Zhou carefully observed for a while and realized that the bubbles weren't formed because of the high temperature. The temperature of the river wasn't high, and the bubbles were rising from the river. What's bubbling down there? Zhou used Truth Listener to scan the river, but the river was like a bottomless abyss. After scanning for more than 1,000 meters, there was still nothing, nor did he discover the river bottom. All he saw was a large number of bubbles rising from the depths of the river and constantly rushing out of the river. If such an anomaly hadn't happened, Zhou had planned on entering the river to take a look, but now, he couldn't enter the river as he pleased. Just as he was pondering, he suddenly saw the bubbles that appeared in the middle of the river turn blood-colored, as though blood was surging out from the bottom of the river. A strong, pungent smell of blood quickly reached Zhou's nose. As the blood surged out, waves began to appear on the river surface. The water level in the middle of the river was clearly rising. Is something coming out? Zhou had already sensed that a behemoth was slowly rising from the depths of the abyss-like river. Chapter 1593. Zhou originally imagined that the thing that floated up would be a dimensional creature, but to his surprise, he saw a huge metal pillar extend out of the abyss-like river after a while. Whoosh! The metal pillar broke out of the water and constantly rose. The part that was exposed above the water was black in color, as though it was made of pig iron. There were many strange patterns engraved on it. The pig iron pillar was more than 2 meters in diameter. After emerging from the water for 7 to 8 meters, it finally stopped. The blood-colored river water that remained on the metal pillar constantly flowed down the patterns on the metal pillar. It looked like the metal pillar was bleeding. What's this? Zhou sized up the metal pillar and suddenly thought of the sea-steadying needle in Journey to the West. They were both inserted into the water, but one was in the sea, while the other was in the river. The way they appeared was very similar. Zhou couldn't help but shout at the metal pillar, "Grow!" The metal pillar clearly didn't react, leaving Zhou rather disappointed. However, he was only on a whim. On careful look, he knew that the metal pillar was still very different from the sea-steadying needle. The sea-steadying needle was also known as the Rui Jingu Bang. Its two ends were golden, but this metal pillar was completely black. It was clearly not the same thing. Zhou first put Liz and Lim into the chaos space. He originally wanted to put Little Bear in as well, but Little Bear refused to burrow in. The chaos egg could only accept creatures that were willing to enter. If Little Bear didn't cooperate, Zhou had no way of putting it in. Thankfully, there was no other movement after the metal pillar appeared, so there was no need to worry for the time being. Zhou glanced at the metal pillar and decided to leave with Little Bear. He wasn't afraid, but it wouldn't be good if anything happened to Little Bear and the sleeping demonic neonate. Just as Zhou turned around and was about to leave, he suddenly felt a huge force come from behind. His body slid uncontrollably towards the metal pillar. Zhou was alarmed as he hurriedly gathered his strength to escape the suction force of the metal pillar. However, his strength couldn't withstand the suction force. Even though he used all his strength, his body still slid towards the metal pillar. Little Bear was in a worse state than Zhou. Its claws clawed at the ground, tearing apart the rocks on the ground, but it still slid towards the metal pillar at a speed faster than Zhou. With a thought, thousands of sword pills appeared out of thin air and transformed into swords that surged towards the metal pillar. Dang 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 dang! The sword pellet bombarded the iron pillar, creating densely packed dents on it. If there was enough time, the iron pillar would probably be smashed by the sword pellet. However, the suction force on the metal pillar didn't vanish. Zhou and the Little Bear were still being sucked towards the deformed metal pillar. Furthermore, the suction force was increasing, making them fly towards the metal pillar faster and faster. Come out! Zhou summoned the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors and the Soul Reflection Mirror. The Golden WYRM scissors transformed into a beam of golden light as it cut towards the iron pillar. The Soul Shroud Mirror also used its Soul Shroud Divine Light on the iron pillar, trying to suck it into the Soul Shroud Mirror. Dang! Just as the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors approached the iron pillar, it was like a piece of iron that was attracted by a strong magnet, directly sticking to the iron pillar. The Soul-Revealing Mirror's soul-revealing divine light shone on the metal pillar, but the metal pillar didn't react at all. It wasn't sucked into the soul-revealing mirror. Instead, the soul-revealing mirror was sucked into the metal pillar. It's too late. Zhou gritted his teeth and used the Master Domain. Among the domains that Zhou had condensed, Human Emperor Sacrificial Heaven was a healing type, while the Chaos Egg was a defensive type. Only the Master Domain had yet to figure out its use, so he decided to use it to give it a try. The Master Domain spread out and an invisible domain immediately enveloped the river surface. Zhou immediately felt his body lighten as the suction force from the metal pillar vanished. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors and the Soul-Revealing Mirror were also put away by Zhou. Little Bear, who was in the Master Domain, stopped at the same time and wasn't sucked towards the metal pillar. Although I don't know what abilities the Master Domain has, it looks pretty useful now. Zhou stood in midair as sword pills appeared in the void. A portion of the sword pellets appeared under Little Bear and lifted him up. Even more of the sword pellets were like a surging river as they charged at the metal pillar, continuously attacking it. Clang! Clang! The metal pillar constantly caved in and deformed from the impact. There were already shattered pieces of metal that fell into the river. Crack! The iron pillar that was exposed above the water surface shattered into pieces and fell into the river. They were forcefully shattered by the sword pellet. However, the metal pillar that was exposed above the river surface was only a very short portion of the metal pillar. Such a strike didn't seem to shake the metal pillar's core. With a thought, Zhou charged into the river and constantly struck the metal pillar, shattering it inch by inch. Even the river water couldn't stop the sword pill's attack. I want to see what's causing trouble. Zhou charged into the river with the endless sword pills. Sword pills appeared out of thin air where Zhou stood, blocking the river water outside. The sword pills inside constantly struck the metal pillar, shattering it. However, the metal pillar was just too long. The portion that Zhou could sense had already exceeded 1,000 meters. If he continued bombarding it, he didn't know when he would be able to destroy it completely. Therefore, after a short attempt, Zhou gave up on completely destroying the metal pillar. He circled around it and, under the protection of the sword domain, followed the metal pillar to the depths of the river. In the calamity-grade sword domain, the sword pill particles were indestructible. Even if they dissipated, they would only turn from the yang side to the yin side. As long as Zhou willed it, he could turn it back. There was almost no expenditure. Zhou dived for 1,000 meters, but he still didn't see the bottom of the river. Beneath him was still a bottomless river. The metal pillar seemed to have no end as it continued extending towards the dark river bottom. I don't believe that you don't have a bottom. Zhou continued charging down. The deeper he went, the stronger the suction force of the river water. The suction force on the metal pillar was even stronger. However, with the protection of the sword domain, the suction force was completely useless against Zhou. The sword domain tore through the river water and quickly rushed into the depths of the river with Zhou and Little Bear. After diving for more than 3,000 meters, Zhou finally sensed the existence of the river bottom. At the same time, he saw the end of the metal pillar. Beneath the iron pillar was a gigantic toad. The toad's entire body was jade white and translucent, and it was actually suffused with a holy halo. The combination of ugliness and holiness looked extremely strange. At that moment, the toad was constantly puffing in a bid to escape the black metal pillar's suppression. The bubbles came from its mouth. The black metal pillar pressed down on its body. Every time it struggled free, the black metal pillar would crush the poisonous scabies on its body. Black-red liquid flowed out from inside, dyeing the nearby river black-red. As the toad puffed, it produced a terrifying suction force that sucked everything nearby into its mouth and swallowed it. Its mouth was like a bottomless pit that couldn't be filled no matter how hard it tried. And its main target was Zhou. Chapter 1594. However, its suction force immediately vanished when it came into contact with Zhou's sure domain. The toad continued sucking with all its might as it looked at Zhou with greed in its eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that it was suppressed by the black metal pillar and couldn't rush out, it would have long charged at Zhou. Only then did Zhou realize that the black metal pillar had penetrated the toad's body and nailed into the rocks at the bottom of the river. Every time the toad stirred, the black metal pillar would rise a few meters and be slowly squeezed out of its body. At the same time, a large amount of blood flowed out. Although Zhou was very willing to fight experts, that typically referred to humans, when it came to dimensional creatures, he had always taken advantage of them. Activating the sword domain, countless sword pill particles charged at the toad. However, when the sword pill particles rushed out of the sure domain, they were immediately sucked into the toad's huge mouth. Then, they lost contact with Zhou as though they had been sucked into another space. This skill is a little similar to behemoths. Zhou constantly bombarded the sword pill particles, but no matter how many sword pill particles rushed over, they were sucked into the toad's mouth. Not a single particle was left. If it were in the past, I really wouldn't have been able to do anything to you. Zhou saw that the metal pillar in its body was rising higher and higher as though it was about to be completely pulled out. Without any hesitation, he charged at the toad. As Zhou approached, the sure domain enveloped the toad. When the sure domain completely enveloped the toad, Zhou discovered a magical scene. The powerful suction force that erupted from the toad's mouth instantly vanished. It felt as though the toad's strength had been shielded. The holy light on the toad's body instantly converged and dimmed. The toad's body was completely devoid of light. Its originally snow-white crystalline body also turned the color of charcoal. Without the terrifying suction force, the light defense on its body vanished. After the sword pill charged at the toad, there was no longer any obstruction. Countless sword pills struck the toad's body like billions of arrows piercing through it. The toad's body was covered in sword holes as blood and venom flowed out. It looked disgusting and terrifying, making one feel nauseous. The toad roared angrily, but it couldn't release its power. It could only circulate it within its body, but its body was nailed to the bottom of the river by the metal pillar, so it couldn't escape. The pitiful toad was forcefully reduced to dregs by Zhou Wen's sword domain. Its body was completely shattered by sword pill, dyeing the nearby river red. Just as Zhou Wen was about to head over to see if there were any companion eggs, he suddenly saw a strange beam of light fly out from the toad's flesh and blood. It shot into the cosmos like a laser and vanished in the blink of an eye. What was that? Zhou Wen frowned slightly as he looked up into the sky, but he couldn't see anything in the cosmos. Crack, crack. The huge metal pillar suddenly started to crack. The originally hard metal seemed to have turned into mud and melted in the water. It was hard to imagine how hard it used to be. Zhou Wen used his sword domain to block the river water outside before searching the toad's flesh and blood. He saw crystalline moonlight seeping out from the flesh and blood. He pulled it apart to take a look. There was actually a jade-like artifact within it. The moonlight-like halo was seeping out from that artifact. What is this? Zhou Wen extended his hand and beckoned, sucking the artifact over. The artifact was crystalline, as though it was a basin carved from flawless jade. The jade basin emitted a hazy halo. Zhou Wen rummaged through the flesh and blood for a while, but he didn't find anything like the Calamity Origins or companion eggs. There wasn't even a dimensional crystal. What the hell is this? Zhou Wen held the jade basin and looked at it for a while. He had never seen something like this from the body of a dimensional creature. It wasn't a dimensional crystal, nor was it a companion egg. There seemed to be a mysterious power circulating in the jade basin, but it was different from the toad's power. The metal pillar had already turned into mud and settled to the bottom of the river. Zhou Wen searched the bottom of the river for a while, but he didn't see the legendary river bottom city, nor did he discover any water ghosts. There's only one toad under the huge yellow river? Zhou Wen was somewhat puzzled. The toad had clearly been suppressed at the bottom of the river for more than a day or two. Why did the toad suddenly break free when he came here? This was too much of a coincidence. Just as he returned to the river's surface, Zhou Wen suddenly saw someone drinking alcohol and roasting meat by the riverbank. Jing Daoxian? Zhou Wen frowned when he saw the person's appearance. This wine isn't bad. Try it. Jing Daoxian threw the stainless steel wine flask at Zhou Wen. That companion egg is yours? Zhou Wen didn't drink it as he threw the wine flask back. The sky mortal goose companion beast isn't bad, right? Jing Daoxian said with a smile. As expected, you were up to something. What are you up to? Zhou Wen asked. Jing Daoxian drank a mouthful of alcohol and took a mouthful of meat. As he chewed, he said, the sky mortal goose companion beast isn't bad, but incubating it will definitely alarm the toad. There aren't many humans on Earth who have the ability to finish off the toad at the bottom of the river. Zhou Wen looked at Jing Daoxian without a word. He didn't believe that Jing Daoxian would give him the sky mortal goose companion egg just for this reason. Do you know the story of a toad lusting after swan meat? Jing Daoxian asked with a smile. Isn't it just a story of a toad lusting after swan meat? Zhou Wen asked. Young man, you should read more books. The protagonists of this story are actually two immortals. One is called Toad Immortal, and the other is called Fairy Swan. At the Queen Mother's Immortality Peach Banquet, Toad Immortal saw the beautiful Fairy Swan and couldn't help himself. He actually wanted to molest Fairy Swan. In her rage, Queen Mother casually threw a moon essence basin at Toad Immortal, preventing him from molesting Fairy Swan. She also banished Toad Immortal to the mortal world. Who knew that the moon essence basin would fuse with Toad Immortal's body and couldn't be taken out again? As the moon essence basin was a gift from the moon god, Queen Mother regretted it. She made Toad Immortal return the moon essence basin when she returned to the heavenly courts. Zhou Wen's heart stirred when he heard Jing Daoxian's story. Could it be that the jade basin is the moon essence basin? That's just a myth after all. Even if that toad really is Toad Immortal, it might not be the same as the myth, Zhou Wen said. It's indeed different. However, the moon essence basin does exist. Furthermore, it's already in your hands, isn't it? Jing Daoxian said with a smile. Chapter 1595. What moon essence basin? I've never seen it before. Zhou Wen immediately denied it. What a joke. It wasn't easy for him to obtain it. It was impossible for him to give it to Jing Daoxian. Jing Daoxian only smiled. Don't worry. I don't want the moon essence basin. I just want to remind you that you have the heaven immortal goose and the moon essence basin. The Toad Immortal won't let you off so easily. I'll say it again. I've never seen that moon essence basin. Besides, I've already killed it. So what if it doesn't let me off? Can it crawl back from the netherworld to bite me? Zhou Wen didn't believe Jing Daoxian. Have you forgotten the story I just told you so quickly? What you killed was only the Toad Immortal's mortal body. It can be considered as helping the Toad Immortal escape. Once it completely recovers its true body, it will soon come looking for you, Jing Daoxian said. Don't tell me you want me to give you the heaven immortal goose and the moon essence basin so that you can lure the Toad Immortal away? Zhou Wen didn't believe a single word Jing Daoxian said. If you trust me, I can help you too, Jing Daoxian said seriously. Stop joking. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Zhou Wen turned around and left. Jing Daoxian said, You should know very well that you can kill the toad because it was suppressed. That body is also a form of restriction for the Toad Immortal. When it recovers and makes a comeback, it won't be that easy to deal with. It's a top heavenly creature. Why don't you tell me what you want the moon essence basin for? Zhou Wen turned around and asked Jing Daoxian. Jing Daoxian had schemed to give the heaven immortal goose companion egg to Zhou Wen to kill the toad naturally for the moon essence basin. I don't plan on hiding it from you. I need the essence of the sun and moon to help the yin-yang mirror grow. The moon essence basin is a treasure of the moon essence. It's very helpful for the yin-yang mirror's growth. Jing Daoxian paused before saying, however, I'm not lying to you. As long as you have the heaven immortal goose and the moon essence basin, the Toad Immortal will be able to find you no matter where you are once it completely recovers its true body. Then let's put it this way. If I give you the heaven immortal goose and the moon essence basin, what benefits will I get? Zhou Wen asked directly. Isn't not having to die the greatest benefit? Jing Daoxian narrowed his eyes and said, I know you're indignant, but how can there be so many things in this world that go according to one's wishes? Young people suffering some losses is also a form of growth. This is the school fee. You have to pay it. As long as you don't die and suffer more losses, you will gain experience. In the future, you can also make others pay your tuition fees. Sorry, I stopped going to school a long time ago. Zhou Wen turned around and left with Little Bear. Don't think that you can fight Toad Immortal just because you killed that toad. The toad is only immortal. It's a completely different concept from Toad Immortal, said Jing Daoxian. That's better than being unable to even deal with a toad, Zhou Wen said without turning his head. I'll be heading to the Yin ruins in the near future. Find me there when you need me, added Jing Daoxian. Rest in peace. Don't worry about me. Zhou Wen waved his hand and quickly left. When you see the real Toad Immortal, you will naturally come find me. Jing Daoxian wasn't in a hurry as he drank a mouthful of alcohol and muttered to himself. Zhou Wen had rejected Jing Daoxian, but that didn't mean that he really didn't take Toad Immortal seriously. Jing Daoxian was right about one thing. If the toad hadn't been suppressed, it wouldn't have been so easy for him to kill it. Furthermore, sure, you had contributed greatly to killing the toad. Otherwise, he would have been in a bitter battle. Regardless of whether Toad Immortal was as powerful as Jing Daoxian said, or if it would come for him, he had to be wary. The most important thing now is to understand Shiryu. This domain is extremely useful. Even if I don't fight Toad Immortal, it will still be of great use in the future. Zhouwen thought for a moment and didn't continue exploring the other dimensional zones. Instead, he teleported to the moon. He wanted to ask Goddess Great Een what exactly the Moon Essence Basin was. "Where's the misfortune dimensional creature I asked you to find?" Goddess Supreme Een asked when she saw Zhouwen. "This. I haven't found it yet." Zhouwen had forgotten about it. It wasn't that Zhouwen didn't want to help, but that Goddess Supreme Yin's requirements were too high. The misfortune attribute was difficult to find to begin with, and the requirement was low in level and high in potential. Zhouwen had never seen such a dimensional creature. "If you haven't found it, why are you here?" Goddess Supreme Een said unhappily. "Goddess, I have something here. I want you to help me take a look at it." Zhouwen took out the lunar essence basin. The door to Goddess Supreme Yin's temple suddenly opened. A beam of moonlight shone out and landed on the lunar essence basin. It swept the lunar essence basin into the temple before the door closed again. "Goddess, what are you doing?" Zhouwen was alarmed as he thought to himself, "Don't tell me Goddess Supreme Een wants my lunar essence basin? Where did you get this from?" Goddess Supreme Een didn't answer Zhouwen's question and instead asked. Zhouwen recounted what had happened. After Goddess Supreme Een heard that, she sighed and said, "I see. Then you are in big trouble. Jing Daoxian is right. As long as the lunar essence basin and Sky Immortal Goose are still on you, the Toad Immortal won't let you off. No matter where you are, it can find you." According to the legends, this lunar essence basin is a gift from the moon god to the Queen Mother. Is it true? Is there really the heavenly quartz and the Queen Mother? Zhouwen asked curiously. Goddess Supreme Een fell silent for a while until Zhouwen suspected that she had fallen asleep. Only then did she say, "There's no heavenly quartz in this world, but the Queen Mother really exists. However, the place she's in isn't the heavenly quartz, but a dimensional zone on Earth." "In that case, the lunar essence basin was really a gift from you?" Zhouwen asked in surprise. "No," Goddess Supreme Een explained. Goddess Supreme Een explained, "The moon essence basin is actually a domain core. It was forcefully destroyed by Queen Mother of the West in a dimensional zone and extracted. I don't know what it was originally used for, but in order to suppress the Toad Immortal, the lunar essence basin was injected into its body." "Where's the dimensional zone where the Queen Mother is?" Zhouwen's heart stirred as he hurriedly asked. "It was destroyed in the great battle of the mythical era. Even if you can find it, there will only be ruins left," Goddess Supreme Een said with a sigh. Zhouwen was immediately alarmed. "Who has the ability to destroy such a dimensional zone?" "I don't know. After all, I'm on the moon. I only know a little about the matters on Earth," Goddess Supreme Een said as she threw the lunar essence basin out. "Jing Daoxian is right. A Heaven Realm Toad Immortal is a top Calamity-grade creature. It's not something an ordinary Calamity-grade creature can compare with. Although the lunar essence basin is a good item, it's not worth sacrificing your life for," Goddess Supreme Een said. Apex. Chapter 1596. Is the Toad Immortal very strong? Zhouwen could tell that Lady Supreme Een was trying to persuade him to give the lunar essence basin to Jing Daoxian. Very strong. Otherwise, the Queen Mother wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to suppress it underground instead of killing it. Lady Supreme Een paused before adding, "A Heaven Realm domain is already a complete domain. Compared to a Hell Realm domain, there's a qualitative difference. Furthermore, you are only at the human stage. It won't be easy to defeat it. Is there no other way? Zhou didn't think that the heaven realm was really invincible. At the very least, God Fallen, who already had the power of the heaven realm, had been killed by the domain core of the forbidden land of gods. Now that Zhou had inherited the power of the forbidden land of God's domain core, although he was still at the human stage, it wasn't impossible for him to restrain the Toad Immortal, just like how sure you had restrained the Toad's devouring domain. Toad Immortal and Toad are two different concepts. The Toad Immortal's power is very special. Even the Queen Mother couldn't kill it. It's obvious how terrifying it is. Lady Supreme Een was still trying to persuade Zhou not to clash with the Toad Immortal head-on. What kind of power does the Toad Immortal have? Zhou asked. I don't know. I only know that the power of moonlight has a restraining effect on its power. That's why I used the lunar essence basin to suppress it. Lady Supreme Een added, don't try your luck. Although they are both at the calamity grade, a heaven realm creature's domain power has already fully matured. There will be a qualitative change, so it's not a good match. I understand. Zhou nodded. He listened to Lady Supreme Yin's words, but he was unwilling to give up the lunar essence basin and heaven immortal goose just like that. After returning to Earth, Zhou thought about what he should do. Zhou believed that there should be a solution to everything. Although the heaven realm was powerful, he didn't have no chance of winning. I'll figure out you first before thinking of a way to fight the Toad Immortal. If it really doesn't work, I'll lure it to the Big Dipper dimensional zone. I'm not afraid I can't kill it. Zhou had no intention of giving the lunar essence basin and sky immortal goose to Jing Daoxian. Jing Daoxian was resting in a wooden hut outside Een ruins. Lu Yun was drawing a map by the side. I say, old man, why must you dig a hole for Zhou? Can't we discuss it properly? Lu Yun grumbled as he drew. Jing Daoxian said with a smile, in this world, don't place your hopes on the kindness and sympathy of others. That's not sympathy. It's cooperation. Lu Yun said gloomily, with Zhou temper, it's definitely impossible for him to return the lunar essence basin to you. Without the lunar essence basin to advance the Yin Yang mirror to the heaven realm, let's see how you will enter the Yin ruins. He will come. In the face of life and death, so-called temper is just a trivial matter, Jing Daoxian said confidently. Are you that confident in the Toad Immortal? You have to know that my junior brother has killed a hell-level creature. A heaven-level creature is just one level higher. Lu Yun was puzzled as to why Jing Daoxian was so confident in the Toad Immortal. The Toad Immortal is also known as the Golden Toad Immortal. Its most famous ability is the Treasure Fall Coin, Jing Daoxian said slowly. Treasure Fall Coin? Is that the legendary ability that can knock down all Dharma treasures? Lu Yun was alarmed. That's just a myth. The real Treasure Fall Coin is actually a sealing power. Be it a creature or a weapon, a human or a companion beast, as long as they are hit by the Treasure Fall Coin, they will be sealed. They will no longer be able to use any of their strength and become mortal, Jing Daoxian said. Then isn't junior brother in danger? Lu Yun said in surprise. Everyone knew that Zhou Wen's main combat strength was his companion beasts, but the Toad Immortal could seal companion beasts. In its domain, companion beasts were useless. Ignoring the fact that Zhou Wen didn't have a guardian, even if he had one, he would still be sealed by the Treasure Fall Coin. Unless his strength far exceeded the Toad Immortal, preventing it from using the Treasure Fall Coin, it was difficult for him to have a chance of victory. With that punk's life preservation abilities, it should be more than enough for him to escape and seek help from me, Jing Daoxian said indifferently. Lu Yun thought for a moment and felt that it was quite interesting to see Zhou Wen piss his pants for help. Then let's wait for Zhou Wen to seek help. The scene of his junior brother crawling over to hug his thigh surfaced in Lu Yun's mind. He felt his heart itch, wishing that the moment would come sooner. Zhouwen wasn't as imaginative as Lu Yun. At that moment, he was studying the Sure Domain. The Sure Domain was formed from his talent, essence, energy, art, and domain core. His strength and the power of his essence energy art were easy to understand, but the power brought about by the domain core was actually unfamiliar to Zhouwen. After any creature fused with a domain core, they needed to go through a trial and error process before they could unleash the true power of the domain. Some domains were easier to understand. For example, some high-temperature domains only needed to control the temperature. However, understanding it didn't mean that one could use it properly. The high-temperature domain wasn't as simple as raising the temperature. There were also techniques to use the difference in temperature. Those needed to be explored and practiced. Zhouwen's Sure Domain was more complicated because the power of the Sure Domain itself was very complicated. Through constant testing, Zhouwen had already learned that there were many types of abilities. The most important ability of the Sure Domain was to seal all nomological powers. In the past, the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder could only prevent Zhouwen from being affected by all sorts of taboo powers. It was considered a passive ability. Now, the Sure Domain could seal all nomological powers and taboos in the domain. Essence energy couldn't be released and could only circulate in a creature's body. Therefore, in the Sure Domain, all creatures could only rely on their bodies to fight. It was almost impossible for them to release their strength. All sorts of domain powers would be sealed in the Sure Domain. Most domain powers would lose their effectiveness. However, some domain powers were used on one's body. The Sure Domain didn't have much influence on such powers. Of course, Zhouwen still didn't know what the limits of the Sure Domain were or if it could seal those high-level domains. This sealing power wasn't all of the Sure Domain. It could even be said that this was only the basic ability of the Sure Domain. There were still some abilities that were built on this foundation. For example, one could selectively remove the sealed powers. And when someone used their abilities in the Sure Domain, the patterns and routes they took would be recorded by the Sure Domain. Zhouwen could directly understand his opponent's various abilities. He could even compare them with the Sure Domain itself to know the various flaws of the other party's abilities. End of this chapter. Chapter 1597. Zhouwen was still constantly studying the various abilities and uses of the Sure Domain. The same piece of paper, in the hands of different people, would have different uses. In the hands of ordinary people, it might only be used as a diary entry, a sticky note, or even to wipe their snot. But in the hands of an artist, it could be a world-class painting. The same thing, used by different people, would have different effects. No matter how powerful the Calamity Domain was, it required the user to have sufficient control and imagination. Otherwise, just the domain itself was strong, but it ultimately wasn't considered a true expert. Just as Zhouwen was studying the Sure Domain, he suddenly heard someone shouting outside. When he listened carefully, he realized that the magic cube had stirred again. Someone was heading to the Big Dipper Palace again. Zhouwen originally didn't care who challenged the Star Palace. Even a Heaven Realm creature wouldn't find it easy to clear the Star Palace. Just like Lord Lutsuan's level, the stronger the Heaven Realm creatures attack, the more tragic their death would be. However, when Zhouwen heard someone call out Tsukuyami, his heart stirred. He hurriedly switched on his phone and clicked on the livestream. Indeed, he saw that Tsukuyami had already entered the Dubhe Palace. Zhouwen wasn't surprised that Tsukuyami could reach such a distant place like the Dubhe Palace. Ignoring the fact that there were magic cubes on other planets, even if there weren't, Tsukuyami's spatial teleportation abilities weren't inferior to Zhouwen's. It wasn't impossible for her to teleport to the Dubhe Palace. Zhouwen was thinking about something else. Tsukuyami is the moon goddess, so she definitely has the power of moonlight. And that toad is restrained by the power of moonlight. Doesn't that mean that Tsukuyami is the nemesis of the Toad Immortal? I wonder what level Tsukuyami is at now? As Zhou was thinking, Tsukuyomi had already walked to the door. Two ghostly phantoms appeared in front of her on the left and right, pushing open the door to the Dubhe Palace for her. When Starlord Greed saw Tsukuyomi, he seemed to feel the pressure. Without waiting for Tsukuyomi to walk over, he launched an attack. A terrifying explosion of light blasted at Tsukuyomi like a volcanic eruption. How will Tsukuyomi deal with Starlord Greed's starlight domain? Zhou thought to himself. In fact, it wasn't just Zhou. Everyone was curious about Tsukuyomi's performance. Tsukuyomi's domain was called Ghost Parade. It had the ability to summon ghosts, but within the starlight domain, the starlight attacked indiscriminately. Summoning one ghost and summoning 100 ghosts wasn't much different. When the explosion of light descended, Tsukuyomi didn't dodge, nor did she have any intention of attacking. Hashiheim, who was wearing a kimono and seemed to be enveloped by darkness, appeared beside Tsukuyomi. The paper umbrella in her hand opened, and a hazy night appeared around her, blocking the explosion of light. Hashiheim held an umbrella and followed beside Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi slowly walked towards Starlord Greed. No matter how powerful the explosion of light was, it was unable to break through Hashiheim's defense. It's just a Hashiheim, but she managed to block Starlord Covetous Wolf's starlight domain. From the looks of it, Tsukuyomi is already at the pinnacle of the Hell stage, Zhou thought. Seeing that the light blast couldn't do anything to Tsukuyomi, Starlord Covetous Wolf immediately rushed down to engage Tsukuyomi in close combat. However, when he rushed over, ghosts suddenly appeared. Starlord Covetous Wolf immediately fell into a heavy encirclement. It was difficult for a wise man to fend off 4 enemies, not to mention that there were far more than 4 of them here. Soon, Starlord Covetous Wolf was surrounded until he died. Tsukuyomi remained standing under the umbrella and didn't move her hands at all. Once Starlord Covetous Wolf died, she walked towards the teleportation array. Goddess Tsukuyomi is too powerful. Ghost Parade. Who can withstand such power at the same level? Whoever fights Tsukuyomi is equivalent to fighting 100 alone. Before anyone could discuss further, they saw a new image appear on the Rubik's Cube screen. It was the image of the Jade Star Palace. Tsukuyomi wants to challenge Starlord Juman? Of course she wants to challenge him. Her domain power is almost invincible at the same level. Let alone the second Star Palace, I wouldn't be surprised even if she were to challenge all the Big Dipper stars. While everyone was discussing, Tsukuyomi had already pushed open the door to the Jade Star Palace. Hashiheim followed by Tsukuyomi's side the entire time. Just as the door to the Jade Star Palace opened, the ferocious ghosts rushed in. Just as Starlord Juman opened his mouth, a fox-like shadow rushed into Starlord Juman's body. Starlord Juman's open mouth closed again. He couldn't make a sound. His body didn't seem to be under his control, making it difficult for him to fight the ghosts. Before Starlord Juman could escape the control, the 100 ghosts had already swarmed forward and instantly devoured Starlord Juman. Tsukuyomi didn't even move a finger to kill 2 Starlord Juman in a row before walking into the teleportation array again. However, this time, the Rubik's Cube didn't produce a new Star Palace. Instead, a ranking appeared. Everyone hurriedly looked at the ranking. Their gazes first landed on first place, but they realized that first place wasn't Tsukuyomi. It was still Tiger Soul General. They had also killed 2 Starlords in a row, but Tsukuyomi was ranked second. How can this be? The Egg Sovereign at least used a companion beast. Tsukuyomi didn't even use a companion beast. How can she be ranked below the Egg Sovereign? That's right. This doesn't make sense. Of course the Egg Sovereign's Tiger Soul General is stronger. He killed Ravenous Wolf and Gigantic Gate single-handedly. His strength is far above Tsukuyomi's. That's right. The Tiger Soul General is undoubtedly stronger. Everyone was discussing who was stronger between the Tiger Soul General and Tsukuyomi. Soon, they were divided into 2 factions. No one could convince the other. All sorts of analysis posts constantly appeared online. The moment the ranking appeared, Zhouwen had already teleported outside Merak. Now, he only hoped that Tsukuyomi hadn't teleported from a certain planet's Rubik's Cube. That way, even if he came to Merak, he wouldn't be able to see Tsukuyomi. After arriving at Merak, Zhouwen quickly teleported towards the entrance of the Star Palace. Before he entered the planet, he saw Tsukuyomi's figure rush out of the planet's high-temperature liquid. Hashiheim was still standing behind Tsukuyomi, holding an umbrella. All the high temperatures, radiation, and shock waves were isolated by the umbrella. "Are you looking for me?" Tsukuyomi said with a smile. "That's right. I want to make a deal with you," Zhouwen said after some thought. Although he had a plan, Lady Supreme Een had said that Toad Immortal wasn't easy to deal with. To be safe, Zhouwen decided to buy insurance. "You know that I never make deals with others," Tsukuyomi said. "This deal is very beneficial to you," Zhouwen said. "Whether there are benefits or not isn't within my consideration." Tsukuyomi remained unmoved. Zhouwen was somewhat disappointed, but he heard Tsukuyomi continue, however, "You are an exception." Apex. Chapter 1598. Zhouwen was puzzled. Although Tsukuyomi had always expressed her affection for him, Zhouwen couldn't figure out why Tsukuyomi had a good impression of him. To Zhouwen, everything needed logic, but he really couldn't figure out why Tsukuyomi had a good impression of him. Therefore, Zhouwen always felt that there was something wrong with this matter, but no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out what the problem was. If it was because of the Heavenly Joy token, he had previously agreed to give it to Tsukuyomi, but Tsukuyomi didn't want it. This reason clearly didn't hold water. Look at this. Zhouwen couldn't figure out why Tsukuyomi had a good impression of him, but at least up to now, Tsukuyomi wasn't a threat to him. This is a domain core? Tsukuyomi looked at the lunar essence basin in surprise. Yes, it's called the lunar essence basin. See if it's useful to you? Zhouwen asked as he held the lunar essence basin. Of course it's useful. Tsukuyomi gave an affirmative answer before smiling at Zhouwen. Are you going to give it to me? Sort of. However, its owner is a heaven realm creature. Furthermore, it cares a lot about the lunar essence basin. It won't let off anyone who takes the lunar essence basin. It will soon find them. Zhouwen paused for a moment before continuing. I can give you the lunar essence basin, but when the time comes, you have to join forces with me to fight the enemy and finish off the original owner of the lunar essence basin. Sure. Tsukuyomi didn't hesitate and agreed. Aren't you going to consider it? That's a heaven realm creature. Furthermore, I heard that it's rather terrifying. It's a top-notch existence among heaven realm creatures, Zhouwen said. What do you think I should consider? Tsukuyomi asked Zhouwen with a faint smile. At the very least, you should ask about the situation of that heaven realm creature, Zhouwen said after some thought. There's no need, Tsukuyomi said. Why? Zhouwen didn't understand. Even if I don't agree, can I watch you be killed when the time comes? Tsukuyomi said slowly. Apart from me, no one can touch my people. Zhouwen's mind was filled with question marks as he thought, when did I become yours? However, Zhouwen felt that there was no point in continuing, so he threw the lunar essence basin to Tsukuyomi. If you can use it as soon as possible. Zhouwen didn't want to give the lunar essence basin to Jing Daoxian, nor did he want to return it to Toad Immortal. Tsukuyomi's help. After all, something like the lunar essence basin was useless to Zhouwen. The primordial energy art he cultivated didn't have a moon elemental attribute. We still have to find a suitable place. This place is not good. Yomi, one said. Zhouwen go out. One out here, a Zhou out, Zhou and Zhou out. When the spatial teleportation ended, Zhouwen realized that he had arrived on a planet. This planet was bare without any signs of life, but many places were covered in thick layers of ice. Tsukuyomi held Zhou Wen's hand and flashed to the bottom of a glacier cliff. There was an underground ice cave with a snow-white fur blanket inside. There were also some daily necessities. It was likely where Tsukuyomi had lived before. It's too dangerous in the cosmos. There might be terrifying cosmic creatures appearing at any moment. I need 2 days to absorb the lunar essence basin. During these 2 days, I won't have the ability to resist external forces. I'll have to trouble you to protect me. With that said, Tsukuyomi sat down on the white fur and held the lunar essence basin in her hands. Moonlight immediately rose from the lunar essence basin. The bright moonlight enveloped Tsukuyomi's entire body as though a bright moon was right in front of her. One could vaguely see Tsukuyomi in the bright moon. The moonlight was as hazy as a veil, making one only see Tsukuyomi's beautiful figure, but it wasn't clear. It added a mysterious beauty. 2 days. Toad Immortal shouldn't be here that quickly, right? Zhou took out a chair from the chaos space and placed it near the entrance of the ice cave. He sat on the chair, took out his phone, and continued grinding. While grinding, Zhou maintained sufficient vigilance. Truth Listener and Brahma's abilities were pushed to their limit. Any commotion nearby couldn't escape his eyes and ears. Zhou chose to enter the Big Dipper dungeon. The first 3 Star Lords had been killed by Zhou, and they hadn't respawned yet. Zhou went straight to the 4th Star Palace, where the Guardian was Civil Star Lord. The last time Zhou came, he was directly sucked into the book in Civil Star Lord's hand. This time, Zhou didn't give Civil Star Lord a chance. He summoned the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors and swung it at Civil Star Lord. Civil Star Lord didn't dodge the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. The book in his hand automatically flipped open as strange words appeared inside. They transformed into a treasure beam that shot towards the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors were indestructible, but when it was illuminated by the treasure beam, it involuntarily flew towards the book and landed on it. It transformed into a picture of the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors and imprinted itself on the page. Holy **T, is Civil Star Lord that impressive? It's also at Hell Stage, but he actually subdued the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. Zhou was alarmed. Civil Star Lord was stronger than he imagined. However, Zhou could tell that the book in Civil Star Lord's hand was very powerful. His combat strength wasn't that great, so as long as he could get close to him, it wouldn't be difficult to kill Civil Star Lord. The crux was how to deal with the book. If it were in the past, Zhou could only attempt to charge forward or find a shield. Now, Zhou had another choice. He could try to see if the Sure Domain could seal the book in Civil Star Lord's hand. This was also Zhou's goal for coming here. Although the Sure Domain was indeed very powerful, Zhou wasn't sure if it was that effective against high-level domains. He could use the Hell Stage of Civil Star Lord as an experiment. Seeing the book in Civil Star Lord's hand open again, a treasure beam of words rushed out of the pages and swept towards Zhou. Zhou summoned the heaven-opening scripture of the Highest Elder. The heaven-opening scripture of the Highest Elder automatically opened as the words inside shimmered with a strange glow. The invisible Sure Domain also activated and enveloped the Migres Star Palace. At the instant the Sure Domain enveloped the Star Palace, the treasure beam that rushed out of Civil Star Lord's book instantly vanished. Even the book that shimmered with the treasure light of words suddenly lost all its light. The words vanished and the pages turned into white paper. Haha, the Sure Domain is about to be invincible. Zhou was overjoyed as he summoned his golden sniper rifle and pulled the trigger at Civil Star Lord. Bam! Civil Star Lord really didn't have any combat skills. He failed to dodge the human stage sniper bullet and the sniper bullet left a bloody hole in his body. Bam! 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 Zhou fired continuously as Civil Star Lord dodged in a sorry state. However, he wasn't very good at combat. He lasted until the 7th bullet that would have killed him, but his head exploded. Apex. Chapter 1599. Killed Calamity Creature, Civil Star. Discovered Dimensional Crystal. Zhouwen was somewhat disappointed that he didn't see any companion eggs. However, when he saw the high-level Essence Energy Crystal, he felt a little more hopeful. Previously, Zhouwen had been raising the level of the invisibility cloak. It was relatively easy to advance the invisibility cloak as long as he had the Essence Energy Crystal. Therefore, Zhouwen had used the Chaos Egg to collect solid essence energy to raise the level of the invisibility cloak. However, the solid essence energy seemed to only be able to raise the invisibility cloak's level to the Terra grade. It couldn't be raised any further. Now that he had the Hellgrade Essence Energy Crystal, he could give it a try and see if he could raise the invisibility cloak further. The Essence Energy Crystal's value was only 200. The other dimensional crystals of various attributes were also 200. This was the basic value of a Hellgrade Essence Energy Crystal. From this, it could be seen that Civil Star, who Zhouwen had killed, was the same as Starlord Greed from before. They were both in their initial state. If the Starlords of the 7 Star Palaces are in their initial states at the Hellgrade, then they don't seem to match their status in myths and legends. In Zhouwen's impression, the 7 Starlords had rather high statuses. It didn't seem likely that they were at the Hellgrade. After feeding the Essence Energy Crystal to the Invisibility Cloak, the other crystals were fed to different companion beasts. After the Invisibility Cloak absorbed the Essence Energy Crystal, the invisible clothes clearly emitted intense essence energy fluctuations. However, the fluctuations lasted for a long time, but they still failed to advance the invisibility cloak again. Finally, the essence energy fluctuations gradually vanished. The invisibility cloak was still at the Terra grade. The Terra transformation of the Terra grade invisibility cloak was invisibility. This greatly increased its invisibility ability, allowing it to remain invisible indefinitely. This invisibility was invisible and formless. It was impossible to sense the location of the invisibility cloak through the collision of matter. Reconnaissance methods like heat were useless against the Terra transformation of the invisibility cloak. After wearing the Terra transformation, the invisibility cloak was basically equivalent to vanishing. Typical calamity grades might not be able to discover it. However, it wasn't really digested. At the very least, when Zhouwen used Truth Listener, he could hear where the invisibility cloak was. Therefore, to be safe, Zhouwen still hoped to raise the invisibility cloak to the calamity grade. If he could hide it from Truth Listener, there probably wouldn't be many creatures at the calamity grade who could discover the invisibility cloak. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid that the fusion of the invisibility cloak with other companion beasts would change the invisibility cloak's abilities, Zhouwen would rather use a calamity grade companion beast to fuse it to the calamity grade. From the looks of it, I still need more high-level essence energy crystals to advance the invisibility cloak to the calamity grade. Zhouwen was already considering where to get more calamity grade essence energy crystals. After cleaning up, Zhouwen chose to teleport to the next star palace. The 5th star of the Big Dipper was the Alioth star. According to the information found on the internet, the Star Lord of the Alioth Star Palace should be called Lianjun. Legend had it that he was in charge of killing and imprisoning. However, as there wasn't much information, and the information might not be the same as a real Stellar Lord, it was difficult for Zhouwen to guess what abilities Stellar Lord Lianjun had. After arriving at the Alioth Star Palace, Zhouwen was surprised to discover that there was no star palace in front of him. There was only a huge jade mountain. The jade mountain seemed to be made of sheep-fat white jade, and it exuded a sparkling and translucent cold air. At the top of the jade mountain, there was actually a peach blossom. The peach blossoms were in full bloom, and the entire tree was covered in pink. A man in white jade armor sat cross-legged under the peach blossom tree. A sheathed white jade sword was placed on his lap. The peach blossoms fluttered as the petals slowly fell, but none of them landed on the Stellar Lord. It was as though all the petals would automatically avoid him. Stellar Lord Lianjun, what kind of stellar lord is he? Zhou stared at Stellar Lord Lianjun as he walked towards the White Jade Mountain. Stellar Lord Lianjun sat under the peach blossom tree as though he didn't notice Zhou arrival. Zhou had already reached the mountainside, but Stellar Lord Lianjun still didn't react. Only when Zhou reached the mountaintop did Stellar Lord Lianjun finally open his eyes. Although Zhou couldn't see Stellar Lord Lianjun's face due to the helmet, he could only see his eyes. It was a pair of eyes that made it difficult for anyone to remember them after a glance. Those eyes weren't ugly at all. They could even be described as good. However, for some reason, seeing those eyes made one shudder. It even made one feel uneasy and want to turn around and escape. Evil aura. That pair of eyes had a kind of evil aura, an evil aura that struck fear into the hearts of others. The pair of eyes stared at Zhou. Zhou had a feeling that he wasn't a person in those eyes, but a pig waiting to be slaughtered on the chopping board. That's right. This should be the Alioth Star Palace. The Stellar Lord should be Lianjun, not Stellar Lord of Military Tune. Why does this fellow look like he's about to use force at the slightest disagreement? Zhou thought. As Zhou thought of this, Stellar Lord Lianjun had already done so. The white jade sword in his hand was instantly unsheathed. When Zhou saw the white jade sword unsheathed, the tip of the sword was already at his heart. It was about to stab in. Clang! The bamboo blade on Zhou's finger flicked out and blocked the white jade sword. When the blades clashed, Zhou, who was holding the bamboo blade, slid down with it. However, Stellar Lord Lianjun had already vanished. When Zhou sensed him again, he was already behind Zhou. The tip of the white jade sword was about to pierce through Zhou's back. So fast. Zhou had already activated the Sure Domain, but the power of the Sure Domain didn't seem to have any effect on Stellar Lord Lianjun. It was obvious that Stellar Lord Lianjun was a Stellar Lord who was good at melee combat. He didn't need to release his strength at all. Furthermore, his movement technique focused on speed, not teleportation. The basic abilities of the Sure Domain didn't have much effect on Lianjun. However, in the Sure Domain, Stellar Lord Lianjun's every move was recorded. Clang! 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 Zhou raised the bamboo blade and fought Stellar Lord Lianjun. Although the bamboo blade was still at the Terra grade, its hardness was in no way weaker than a Calamity grade weapon. The repeated collisions with the white jade sword failed to damage it. Stellar Lord Lianjun's combat strength was very strong, in no way weaker than Stellar Lord Covetous Wolf. However, the two of them were good at different combat methods. Stellar Lord Covetous Wolf's entire body was a weapon. He could use any technique to perfection, but Stellar Lord Lianjun was different. He only knew how to use a sword. Furthermore, his sword was only fast. It wasn't as varied as Stellar Lord Covetous Wolf's. In all the martial arts in the world, only speed was unbeatable. Zhou's transcendent flying immortal was already very fast, but compared to Stellar Lord Lianjun, it appeared as slow as a snail. In moments, Zhou's body was covered in many sword wounds. Chapter 1600. Star Lord Lianjun's sword speed became faster and faster. His movement technique also became faster and faster. It was similar to Feng Qiuyan's swift saber. However, Star Lord Lianjun's speed was many times faster than Feng Qiuyan's. Zhou couldn't keep up with that speed. Even if he used his prediction ability, he still couldn't withstand Star Lord Lianjun's attack. Zhou originally wanted to summon the Golden WRM Scissors and kill Star Lord Lianjun, but on second thought, such a fast sword was extremely rare. If he were to kill Star Lord Lianjun now, he didn't know when he would respawn. Instead of killing him now, he might as well use him to practice his saber technique. Transcendent Flying Immortal also took the path of winning with speed. Having such an opponent for actual combat training was many times better than training by himself. With this in mind, Zhou gave up on the thought of killing Star Lord Lianjun and only fought him with his saber techniques. Transcendent Flying Immortal was very strong, but Zhou speed and strength were much inferior to Star Lord Lianjun's. It was difficult to make up for the difference with pure saber technique. Furthermore, Star Lord Lianjun's swift saber had already entered the mirror transformation realm. Furthermore, it was becoming faster and faster. Before long, Zhou couldn't withstand it and his heart was pierced by Star Lord Lianjun's sword. The game screen turned black as Zhou dripped his blood to revive and entered the Alioth Star Palace again. Battle after battle ended with Zhou's death. However, such battles weren't completely meaningless. The disqualification allowed Zhou to see Star Lord Lianjun's flaws, but because he was too fast, he couldn't grasp the flaws even if he saw them. As for Shiryu, he had recorded Star Lord Lianjun's trajectory. Although this trajectory wasn't as direct as a video, it simplified the complexity, allowing Zhou to understand many things directly. Star Lord Lianjun's sword speed was very fast, and it looked chaotic. It was as though there was no trajectory to be found, making it impossible to guard against. It was almost impossible to predict his trajectory. However, from the trajectory recorded by Shiryu, Star Lord Lianjun wasn't really without a pattern. However, there were just too many variations of Star Lord Lianjun, so many that humans couldn't remember them. It was like an infinite loop of decimals. No matter how many numbers there were in the middle, they would eventually repeat. It wasn't like an infinite loop of decimals. There was really no pattern to it. Star Lord Lianjun's variations could reach millions or even more, so ordinary people couldn't see any pattern. However, Zhou, who had the teacher domain, could deduce the subsequent changes after obtaining a portion of his trajectory. He didn't need to see all the changes. Zhou increasingly felt that Shiryu's ability was terrifying. Although it wasn't a pure strength-type ability, it was an ability that was the easiest to approach origins. Star Lord Lianjun's messy and disorderly sword technique was something that others might not be able to see in their entire lives. However, Zhou seemed to be able to predict the future. He would always be able to attack first or grab onto his flaws. Finally, he slashed at Stellar Lord Lianjun. This was the first time he had injured Stellar Lord Lianjun. Zhou was delighted. Shiryu was giving him more and more surprises. Even he found it hard to predict what kind of power he could develop in the future. This won't do. I'm purely relying on the power of the teacher domain to win. I haven't practiced any saber techniques at all. I have to practice my saber. Zhou gave up on using the teacher domain and purely used Transcendent Flying Immortal to fight. The 3,000 sword intents were very powerful, and so was the heart-defying sword art. However, in comparison, Zhou preferred Transcendent Flying Immortal. It was for no other reason than Transcendent Flying Immortal's purity. It saved him trouble. The 3,000 sword intents were too cumbersome. In fact, it didn't match Zhou's personality. Zhou died again and again. The experience he exchanged for was something he couldn't obtain under normal circumstances. Zhou was only at the Terror grade. Without the augmentation of various domains, the gap between him and the Hellgrade Star Lord Lianjun was too great. It was almost impossible for him to win in a pure competition of technique. Every battle ended in death. However, Zhou never got tired of it. Every death would allow Transcendent Flying Immortal to make a breakthrough. In the past, although Zhou's Transcendent Flying Immortal focused on speed, it was more domineering. Immortal Slaying, which was born from Transcendent Flying Immortal, was domineering to the extreme. However, when facing an opponent like Star Lord Lianjun, if he were to be domineering, even if Zhou pushed Immortal Slaying's power to its limits, it would ultimately be like striking a rock with an egg. However, Transcendent Flying Immortal wasn't only domineering. There were other areas where Zhou could unleash his full potential. Zhou's saber techniques became faster and more elegant. His body was like a flying immortal as his saber came from beyond the heavens. His saber techniques and movement techniques were becoming more and more unfathomable. Other saber techniques were direct, but Zhou Wen's saber techniques were becoming more and more curved. Zhou Wen rarely had the chance to practice a single skill because he cultivated too many essence energy arts, making it too difficult for him to advance. Other humans who used mythical liquid, spirit casting, or contracted guardians only needed to find a suitable domain core to quickly advance to the calamity grade. They could even quickly reach a higher level. In order to keep up with his progress, Zhou Wen had no choice but to devote a large amount of time to various essence energy arts and dimensional zones. Although it was very difficult, the benefits he obtained were immeasurable. It was almost impossible for other humans of the same level to clear the Big Dipper dungeon alone. There was always a Star Lord who could restrain their strength, making it difficult for them to win. However, Zhou Wen could clear the Big Dipper dungeon with his own strength. This was the difference. Just as Zhou Wen was practicing Transcendent Flying Immortal, he suddenly heard a commotion. The commotion was somewhat terrifying. Zhou Wen put down his phone and listened attentively. Truth Listener immediately turned the sound into an image and presented it in his mind. He saw a huge warship-like beast forcing its way into the atmosphere. Its body rubbed against the atmosphere, producing a lightning-like glow. The azure lightning produced by the friction with the atmosphere covered its entire body, making it look like a huge electric eel wrapped in azure lightning. Unlike the electric eel, there was a pair of wings on each side of its body. The 4 butterfly wings were also wrapped in azure lightning. As it flapped its wings, the lightning produced by the friction spread out in the atmosphere. Lightning flashed between the sky and earth, illuminating the originally dark planet. Zhou Wen's heart immediately palpitated. Although the lightning wasn't emitted by a universe creature, the fact that it could produce lightning from friction was definitely related to its body. Just from the might of the lightning, he knew that this universe creature was definitely not someone to be trifled with. According to what Zhou Wen knew, universe creatures were typically divided into 2 categories. One was companion beasts that broke out of the stars. There were relatively few of them, but the first one was extremely impressive. If one encountered one in the universe, fleeing immediately was the best choice. There were more of the second category. For example, dimensional creatures like Tsukuimi that came from planets had varying strengths, but no matter how weak they were at least at the mythical stage or above. There were fear calamities, but calamities occupied the majority. It wasn't because there were few creatures of other levels that entered the universe, but because too many died. The universe creature in front of him was at least at the mortal stage, or even stronger. Apex. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.